call the regular meeting of City Council to order for Monday, May 28, 2018. Our first item on the agenda this morning is our proclamation, our delegations. And our first delegation this morning is Angie Duckin from the Northern Brain Injury Association in attendance for our Brain Injury Awareness Month proclamation. So, get to come up front, please. Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome. Thanks for coming this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
So it's my pleasure this morning to read our proclamation and make the declaration. Whereas everything we as humans know, see, think, speak, feel, do, or experience is facilitated by the brain. And whereas any injury to the brain permanently affects our ability to know, see, think, speak, feel, act, and experience life. And whereas brain cells in most areas of the brain cannot regenerate themselves, unlike most other cells in our body. And whereas 60 British Columbians each day, 22,000 each year, experience a brain injury, survivors can face a life of social isolation, misunderstanding, poverty, and struggles with self-concept. And whereas the perception of injury to the brain, supportive survivors in our community understanding of acquired brain injuries is of paramount importance. Now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim June 2018 as the Acquired Brain Injury Awareness Month in Dawson Creek. So thanks so much for coming in this morning, and I'll be happy to have you say a few words if you like. Yeah, sure, and I'll stand close to you so you got the mic.
Okay, I just wanted to say the Northern Brain Injury Association has been in Dawson Creek for quite a few years now. Not very many people know about us, but we are here to support people with brain injury as well as to educate the public about brain injuries, what happens and how to prevent them. Coming into the summer months, it's very important to wear your helmet. I see lots of kids riding their bikes, scooters, skateboards without helmets, and parents as well. So it's our job to provide an example, thank you, for the children of the community. So
great example of that too, because people don't realize how easily closed head injury can happen just by falling and bumping your head.
Yeah, and no fault of your own either. Like if you're a great bicycler, that's great, but a vehicle can still hit you and still damage you, and a bicycle helmet can reduce your chances of brain injury by about 88%, I believe it is. So it's very important to wear a proper one and have it fit properly as well.
Thanks so much. We appreciate you coming in this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next delegation this morning is the Dawson Creek Society for Community Living, are in attendance regarding Access Day proclamation.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Carol. Yeah. So I'll just put it right here. And they're going to stand right in behind you. This is Carol and this is Melissa.
Good morning. Come and stand in behind with the mayor.
Perfect.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Whereas accessibility and inclusion is essential for ensuring that all community members have equity in opportunities and the ability to fully participate in community life. And whereas accessibility affects all aspects of community life, physical, social, and economic, including employment, transportation, recreation, housing, and other opportunities. And whereas we all have a role to play in ensuring that our communities are as accessible and inclusive as possible. Now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim Saturday, June 2nd, 2018, as a day for individual and group action to promote positive ways of working together to create an accessible and inclusive community for all our citizens as Access Awareness Day in Dawson Creek.
Yay.
So there's your proclamation, Carol. Thank you so much for coming in this morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
And the floor is yours.
Do you want to hold on to this? This one? Yes. Thank you.
Access Awareness Day is going to be held on June 6th. We're going to be having a barbecue down by the Visitor Center, right by the Art Gallery. Access Awareness Day was brought about by Spark BC. It's not just a day that we celebrate, it is a call to action to make our city more accessible not for just for people with disabilities, but for the whole community. Think about an accessible door. It's not just for someone in a wheelchair, but maybe for a pregnant mother who has lots of children that she has to make sure that get through that door. What about accessible parking for older adults who need that space so they can get their groceries? Accessible crossways for people who are not able to see or hear as well, with the sound that will be able to allow them to cross. We thank you for this proclamation. It's going to make a huge transformation in the lives of people.
Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you, Carol. Good to see you. We'll see you on June 2nd. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Want to help me again, Carol? Yeah, I'll help you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Great job. Our next delegation this morning is Debbie Pittman and Brianna Hall, our residents of Dawson Creek, in attendance regarding 17th Street flooding. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, I am Debbie Pittman. This is Brianna Hall, and I have other people behind me that have come to this meeting as well. It's Jerry Bergeron from Bergeron Funeral Home, Randy Haney from Red Weld, Andrew Hall from Tryon, Dave from Zwick's Plumbing, and Ross of Pete's Country Auto. We're here today to talk about the flooding on 17th Street. As you know, it had to be blocked off because of the runoff. Where it was blocked off was actually near my daughter's residence. When we purchased the property, we were told that it had flooded in 2011, 2017, and now this year as well. Last year, the city had fixed the problem downtown, which was 2 culverts that had gotten plugged every year, and so that issue is now resolved. But now the problem is on 102nd Avenue, which caused the 17th Street flooding. It has the same problem, only worse. The 2 culverts that are in there are separated by cement barricades on either side, which I would assume is holding up the bridge. The flow of water was stopped because of this poorly constructed bridge, and I had emailed a photo of the 2 culverts. We would ask that this bridge be made as wide as the original creek under it, as for 56 years this was not flooded until the city had built a man-made solution, which has not worked. Many homes and businesses would appreciate this course of action. We were told that the cost would be $1 to $4 million to correct, which is outrageous, but my solution is then to maybe block off 102 Avenue and remove the overpass altogether until funds become available, as there are streets before and after 102 Avenue that go to 17th Street. I hate to think that every spring, every property has the potential to flood and will never be able to use their basements in their own home, not because of anything as owners did wrong. We are also worried that the next time it will take all the surrounding dirt from around the foundation of my daughter's home and basement walls will be exposed. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much for having
Thank you.
us.
Does anybody have any questions of delegation? Councillor Javeka?
So you're talking about 102nd Avenue. Did you notice that if 17th Street, the culverts there, where the bridge is affecting the flooding as well?
When we talked to the workers that were taking care of the flooding in that, the 2 workers even said that what was blocking it off was the 102 Avenue bridge, because of there's the 2 culverts and then there's barricades there and barricades on the side. So then I guess they got the trucks out to pump from one end of the bridge to the other, which
It solved it temporarily.
well,
Just for this year.
it was
But-
basically too late. Because
Yeah, I was already flooded at this time. Water had already gotten into my basement, so, but it did just stop it from getting any worse. But we were hoping to maybe solve the solution ahead of time for next year and every year
since
after.
2017, when the previous owner had the property, they took out the basement windows and put up plywood, which we were actually going to take out and put in proper windows and fix up the basement because we thought the solution was solved downtown. And luckily we didn't, because if we would have done that, her whole basement would have been flooded again and would have had to buy a new furnace again, a new hot water tank, and you name it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Any other questions? Thank you. So thank you for coming in this morning. Obviously, the spring, when as every spring, you worry about the impacts of flooding. We had a 16 was a bad year with the rain, and 11. So this year, the council has this past winter engaged a company to do a flood mitigation plan for us to help understand the floodplain, the implications of what's impacting it, so that you can put that proper plan in place to be able to ensure that we do all we can to mitigate the impacts of flooding for our community. And I use that term deliberately in terms of mitigate, because you never eliminate. In 2016, we got 100 and some millimeters of rain in 24 hours. You're never going to stop that event from impacting the creek and adjoining properties, but you can put those effective measures in place to plan for the future of ensuring we have appropriate infrastructure to mitigate that, and certainly that's what council is aiming to do. So we really appreciate you coming in this morning, obviously on behalf of all the residents, Jerry and Andrew and Dave and Randy and folks down there and Ross that are those property owners that are at immediate risk, and we really appreciate you coming in to give us that overview and your perspective.
All right.
Thank
you
you
very much for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next delegation this morning, item 2.4, we have Jeff Leckstrom, Transportation Manager from School District 59, is in attendance to request no parking. Morning, Jeff.
Morning. Thank you very much for having me. Just follow up from the letter that I'd sent to council on April 12th, and the request was denied for parking. I don't think I was clear enough. As everybody had a chance to read through the... Okay, I won't read it then. I'll save you some time. I think there was some confusion as to where we were asking for parking. The issue we have is the commercial transport haulers, sand haulers and stuff, parking in front of School District 59 property. What happens is we have a number of school buses going in and out of there daily, all times of the day, starting about 6 o'clock in the morning, actually a little earlier than that, 5:45 in the morning, finishing between 5:30 and 6 at night on some nights. And when the trucks are parked there, the buses have to pull way out. It makes it one lane traffic basically from the intersection of 116th to the exit where we go out for and come in from School District 59 property. The buses have to swing way out into the other lane, to the oncoming lane. And if there's traffic coming from 116th onto 7th Street, it backs the traffic up around the corner, and then people are taking risks. They're trying to dodge out around the trucks. We got buses going in, buses coming out, and it hasn't been an issue up until now, but with the amount of commercial traffic and everything that's parking around town, that's been a site where there's 2 trucks parked. We did work with the city last fall, and Kevin and his crew put up a couple of signs within 30 meters of each of the entrance exits. The trucks have backed. I mean, they know exactly where to park. Their back end of their truck is within 6 inches of those signs, or the front end. And for us to pull out and around with a school bus is a real hazard. I don't want any accidents per se with a school bus or motoring public or anybody, or somebody getting clipped there. So that's why I've asked. I think it was unclear when I was presented or when the letter was sent last that when he said there was parking for 7th Street. There's 3 businesses adjacent to the school district property. They all have ample parking lots there that are significant. I've never seen them full in the time I've been at the district yet. So I'm not asking for parking all the way along to Canadian Tire or anything, just the 200 meters from the school district property, the end of school district property, to 116th Avenue. And I think that'll mitigate some of the risks that we have going on there, which to me is significant risk in the morning, in the evening, and in the afternoons, as well as early morning. So,
Thanks, Jeff. Questions? Councillor Parslow.
Jeff, there's about 30 odd buses in that we're talking about coming in and out of there each.
yeah, we
day.
have
Sometimes they come in and out twice a day at least.
sometimes 2, sometimes 3, depending on what it is. We do a number right now. For instance, in our system, we have over 100 extracurricular trips. So those buses go in and out any time of the day.
Yeah.
Most of our buses are leaving, from 5:45, and then they're returning by 9:15 in the morning. And then all throughout the day, we have buses going in and out of there. And then buses go out, early buses go out 1 o'clock, and then the other buses go out later. So we have 30 routes. We have 39 school buses, and then those routes are going in and out, as well as some based in the rural areas.
Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, Jeff, have you talked to EMCO, people over there, about not having any parking on the road in front of their store? Because
There is, I've never seen, Mark, I've never seen or Councillor, I've never seen anybody parked on that side. They're parked in their lots. I've never seen their lots full yet, and I'm there from 5:30 in the morning till 5:30 at night, so.
Okay, because I asked one guy about taking his dump truck and his backhoe and stuff like that, and I said, can he park in the lot? And he said, yeah, if nobody else is actually in the
Yeah.
lot, then they can get in, stuff like that.
Well, EMCO, they can pull in, and then they've got a double lane to get
Yeah,
out,
'cause they're
right?
coming in and
Yeah, they go in and out there, so, yeah.
Councillor Javetkov.
So if the trucks park on the west side of the street, does that affect you as well, or just on the east side?
Actually, wouldn't, I mean, it would affect us in a different way than Councillor. What would happen is then the traffic coming in from 116 would divert out around, and we'd be stopped coming this way. So, and we've had some close calls there with that, and that's my concern. I think if they park on the other side, what's gonna happen is it'll just be a risk on the other side of the street. They're gonna come in and they're gonna block off areas for parking lots that are there already, and there's gonna be people coming out of parking lots like EMCO or, Independent Forest and the other business there, that they're gonna take risks coming out of that as well. So, like I said, it's 200 meters. I'm not talking about the whole street. I'm talking about 200 meters of, which backs up significantly with traffic at a number of different times during the day.
Anything further? Jeff, thanks very much. So we'll bring this back under Mayor's business
Okay.
for reconsideration of the request, and that'll be dealt with later in the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in.
Appreciate it.
2.5, we have group in for Aaron, Haley, Kim, Haley, Alicia, Payton, Dylan, Garrett, Jordan from, is that?
You're going too far.
Gone too far?
Yeah, just go with the rugby.
All right. Aaron and Haley and Kim and team for our rugby team.
Yes.
Good morning, ladies.
Good morning. So on behalf of our rugby team, this is Aaron and Peyton, and we just really wanted to say thank you for every opportunity that you've given us with the gravel and community cleanup. With that money, actually, we were able to go to provincials. We are the first Northeast BC team to actually participate in a provincial tournament. Peyton, do you want to add anything?
And you won.
Okay, no. we won 3 out of 6 games, but yeah, we had a blast. It was the most fun weekend I think we've had as a team ever. We got to participate in a practice with the Japanese team. We got to be ball runners on the professional pitch and watch the professionals play all weekend. It was incredible. Best experience of my life. And we wouldn't have been able to go without you guys, so we just really wanted to come and say thank you.
So thanks for coming in this morning, obviously. And we so appreciate the fact you guys went down there and represented the Northeast so well in terms of having that experience. And we look forward to seeing you continue on with those rugby careers and next steps. So thanks for coming in this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's about winning. That's how us boys think. Right?
It's about the fun.
2.6, we have our Youth Advisory Council in this morning, and so I'm not going to go through. You guys can introduce yourselves, and it's Sydney?
Yep.
Ethan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And this is the Youth Advisory Council that Councillor Rogers has been very involved in and moving forward. So we'll welcome you guys and appreciate you coming in this morning, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks for having us. So the Youth Advisory Council is something that has been kind of pressured from the council before and from the school, and we finally decided to make it a reality this year. And there's a few things that we like to touch on. It's mostly things concerning the safety and the entertainment and the security around our town and our school. Things that students will benefit from, along with parents as well, with kids, and first-handly, like, the future of Dawson Creek. So we like to touch on things when we go into safety. We like to go into traffic, we go into Rotary Lake, we go into drug usage, suitable times and places that construction should be done. Sorry, just to be clear, we're not like asking for anything. We're just kind of like, it's like an introduction. So, yeah, do you want to?
Sure. Where are we at here? Really no idea. Okay, so where do we go from here? Pick a spot.
I think you guys got most of it.
Yeah.
Everything we were talking about the other day. We have been, I've met with this group a few times now, and it's been actually a really unique experience for me, getting views from a completely different perspective. And basically what's been coming out of the meetings is nothing's impossible. And I just thought that it was really, I'm just really proud of these kids for stepping forward. You know, it's kind of a thankless job, kind of like what we're doing here. And what they chose to focus on surprised me, and that was safety. Safety in the community, safety in the school.
Yeah, especially security, yeah.
So they're still working towards the, under terms of reference and stuff like that, which they've already indicated that we're gonna be changing some of this stuff. But, I think we got our champions are identified, and we're moving forward, and I think come September, you'll see you'll have a lot more people getting involved.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, it's fairly new so far, but we have one more application coming in, and we're going to be working hard to advertise it in the future, and we should have a lot more members by next year. So this is mostly just an introductory, but you guys will probably be seeing a lot more of us in the future concerning things that we're going to want to bring in. We want to bring in more like sports plexes. We were looking at a field house. We were talking about just more fun things to do overall too. Like, and we have so much sports that come into Dawson, and I know when I go like play hockey or something, I like doing fun things in the town when I'm there, and I think other people would enjoy that too, doing fun things with their kids or their friends. And then, yeah, we also mentioned, like you said, security is a huge thing that we've been focusing on. We've touched on things with the principals and the vice principals. We've had multiple meetings with them. We got lots coming up. We're hopefully looking to make some major changes here soon concerning who comes in and comes out of the school, the traffic around the school. Yeah, just general safety and stuff for teenagers and younger and just all the youth, pretty much.
Well, our community, we talk about the mantra of being a community with a strong quality of life, and quality of life to me is health and happiness. And how do you make that public safety component, which is such a big component of that, how do you build upon that? And so I think it's really terrific that you guys are taking that on from your community at the school, and on behalf of our community, to be able to help us enhance and build upon that. So kudos to you guys, great job.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're gonna get a lot farther with it, I hope.
So we look forward to seeing you guys.
Yeah, there'll definitely be more, and there's more of us. So.
Yeah. Councillor Parslow.
Thank you for being here. Can you expand a little bit about safety and Rotary Lake? You mentioned Rotary Lake. What's been discussed?
We've just been, sorry, you want to say something?
So we've lightly discussed our thoughts on Rotary Lake and just kind of the overall safety about it. And if in this time that the lake is necessary now. So we've briefly touched on it. We haven't gone too far into detail with it. Just mostly throwing around some ideas with the rest of our group.
Yeah, and we've heard some stuff concerning having things with pool regulations now. There's more stuff coming in also concerning the safety, and we've been touching on is it really worth it to spend money on something that might only be used for 30 days of the year. And we were wondering if there might be some better things we could turn it into in the future that just make more sense.
Well, we're going to have a public meeting tonight in the community, and that's going to be, that's the focus of our public meeting tonight, is to talk exactly about that in terms of Rotary Lake and the future of it, and what should it be and what should it look like, and the decisions council are going to have to make. So we'd really welcome that from you guys, if you can put some time into that and give us your thoughts in the coming month or so. We'd really appreciate that, because that's what helps obviously guide the decisions that are made here, is information from our community. And that's what tonight will be.
Yeah, we'll definitely look more into it.
Great. Good. Anything further for our delegation? So thanks you guys so much for coming in. We really appreciate the initiative that you guys are showing in terms of getting involved in our community and helping bring a different perspective to council that sometimes we don't get. And so kudos to you guys, and thanks for coming in today.
Well, thank you for having us.
Come again.
We sure will.
So 2.7 this morning was to be Ryan and Hillary regarding the tourist proclamation. Ryan isn't here today. Obviously, we want to pass on our sincere condolences to Ryan and Allie. Allison's dad passed away suddenly last night, or the night before last, and so Ryan isn't able to be here this morning, but we have Brent and Allison, and we'll do the proclamation. Good morning. Welcome. Sure, we'll get a picture with it. So whereas the tourism industry within Dawson Creek is a major contributor to our local economy, and whereas it is deemed desirable to designate Be a Tourist in Your Own Town Summer to raise awareness of the unparalleled and uncommon attractions within Dawson Creek and the surrounding areas, thus encouraging residents to visit and become more aware of the value of tourism resources. And whereas the enlightened awareness will lead to a better understanding of the value of tourism within our community. Now therefore I do hereby proclaim the months of June, July, and August 2018 as Be a Tourist in Your Own Town Summer in Dawson Creek.
Yay! Staycation.
There you go. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
There's your proclamation.
There's your picture.
There's your picture.
Oh, where about your sign?
Oh, we should have our sign.
Get your sign in there. Woo! BC Tourism Matters. Hashtag BC Tourism Matters.
And the floor is yours.
Sure. So as we just heard from the students that just came up, they mentioned when they go out and about for sports and those kind of things, they like to do things and have fun in other towns. So as we know, Dawson Creek is an amazing community. There's tons of things here that we offer that a lot of people don't really know about yet. So we decided, instead of just Tourist in Your Own Town Month like we traditionally,
I got it.
we decided to blow it up into Tourist in Your Own Town Summer. And our hope is that with this, we can really highlight those businesses and those clubs and the events that a lot of people don't know about in towns, such as disc golf, some of the small shops at downtown that are opening, and some of the opportunities as well. So when you wake up in the weekend, you don't think, oh, this is going on in Grand Prairie, let's go here. You can check your calendar and say, this is what's happening in Dawson Creek, let's stay in town, and let's bring our friends in town, and let's help our community thrive.
Yay!
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Tourist in Your Own Town Summer.
Did she say disco?
Disc golf.
Disco golf, yeah.
I was having a little flashback there.
Disco golf.
Disco. So our next two were Ryan was here to present on the Spectra annual report, and we're going to just basically receive the report, and we'll have an update from Ryan at a future meeting. We're shaking our head yes. Duncan?
So through your worship, they're scheduled to deliver a committee of the whole in June, so we'll just ask them to update at that time.
Awesome, okay.
Excuse me, through your worship,
Sorry?
a motion to receive the report.
Do we do that in, it's okay, oh, it's on the agenda, so, yeah.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Schumann, seconded by Councillor McFadden. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And that will, we have another delegation later on this morning at 11:30. And so we'll now move to new councillor business. Councillor Parslow.
We know that on our diary for maybe 2 years, we've had the question of rooming houses. I'd just like to ask her a question after I just give you some background information. A resident, as we encourage residents to do, came to our bylaw department with a complaint about a rooming house and inquired about their business license and etc. And after consulting with senior staff, Bylaw informed this individual that the city was powerless to do anything about the situation. So my question and concern is in general, just in general, what needs to be in place so that we can have properly licensed rooming houses, because this situation is a safety issue as well as I think a quiet, residents are entitled to a quiet place to live as well. And so what needs, why are you powerless? What needs to be in place?
So through your worship, I'll just ask if Kevin maybe can come up to the delegation table. So we had originally planned to talk about this in committee of the whole. So Kevin has some information, can maybe walk through how we got to where we are today, and what the plan is moving forward.
Perfect. Morning, Kevin.
Morning. Thank you. So rooming houses, boarding houses, crew houses, whatever we want to call them, certainly present a few challenges for us, specifically the language we have in our current zoning bylaw, based on any legal advice that we've gotten, is a bit problematic for us to enforce the way it's laid out. Because you need to get in and determine whether people are related, unrelated, and honestly, to do so is going to be pretty tough to investigate, short of getting court injunctions. We don't have the ability just to go into people's homes and start asking those sorts of questions. And even though you may be able to, from the street, determine that people are coming and going and that, yes, by all accounts, it appears to be a crew house, that is not going to be enough if you get into the court of law. But I want to temper council's expectations too moving forward. We need to probably bolster our language. But again, the advice we've been given is that even with stronger language, there's no certainty that we're going to be able to completely do away with this type of housing. All you need to do is kind of look at the challenges that you're seeing in larger centers that are dealing with Airbnbs and VRBOs and these short-term rentals, and the challenges they're having to try and regulate and manage and deal with the problems out there. So this is just a slightly different form of those types of housing. So our intent is with our RFP for our zoning bylaw update is we specifically said we need to try and address some language around this, and we'll see where that goes and try and work towards some stronger language. But I just say that it may come down to stronger, more problematic, more time-consuming enforcement and regulations if we really want to do more about it. So, and I don't know exactly what that's going to look like just yet, but it's going to be tougher rather than easier to try and manage. That's what I know. So we're a ways out before we can deal with that. Currently, if there's people in a so-called crew house and the vehicles are parked on the property, and they're not large commercial vehicles, if they're just pickups, there's not a lot that we can do. If the home is in its, just only has one kitchen and it's just a bunch of bedrooms. If for some reason it was renovated without a building permit and it had multiple suites within it, multiple cooking facilities, then that's a different situation, and we may be able to do more with that, because that really becomes a building code issue. But if it is simply a single family dwelling with one kitchen, facilities, and a bunch of people sleeping in bedrooms, the end result is that it's not a lot different than a large family living there. Even though that they may be unrelated, the impact is not a lot different. I understand there's people coming and going and earlier hours and whatnot, but it gets a little more problematic, at least with our current language, to try and manage. So
you didn't mention the lens of people being required to have a business license. So what's the legal advice about that? I mean, doesn't bylaw have the authority to say, ask the person, the owner, if they have a business license?
We have no bylaw to require business licenses for crew houses or for this type of so-called business. It's not a hotel, it's not a commercial, although one could argue maybe it is, but we've had no direction to date to implement a business license bylaw specifically for this type of housing.
You've had no direction from council?
No, we've had direction to explore, but we haven't had direction to, that I'm aware of, to implement a business license bylaw for this type of housing.
And through your worship, before we jump to implementing a business license, we'd want to understand that ramification. We're continuing to work with our lawyer. I think we received our last bit of information last week, and this was whether or not we can walk into somebody's house and start asking if people are related, which we can't. So we're working our way through this process, and like Kevin says, we haven't had any direction. We're not prepared for that direction either yet. And as we bring forward that OCP and as we bring forward those bylaw updates, that would be the appropriate time to look at the business licensing as well.
Councillor Roger?
Yeah. Well, further on in the agenda, we just actually did that. There's those 2 suites that were recently renovated. Those are resident, or it's in a commercial zoned area, but most of Dawson Creek, 90% of Dawson Creek is zoned RS2.
I don't know the percentage.
There's not a whole lot of RS1 in the city of Dawson Creek, and I've said this, years ago when we were talking about rooming houses, because this has been on the agenda, it's been, I think, on the diary for a couple of years. But if you are operating a rooming house, that's a business, and I've said that before. There should be a permit for that and a business license for that. Either one. If there was a business license for it, then that gives the authority of the fire department to actually go in and do a check on that building to make sure that it does coincide with regulation bylaw 4287, which is a BC building code, which we're going to be talking about later on. So if it is a business, it's a rental business, there should be a business license, and then there should also be some sort of a permit for that building in that area. And I don't, if it's staff is waiting for direction on that, I just would ask council, like, is that something that we direct staff to do?
And we're doing that through our OCP and our zoning bylaw, and in order to do that, you need to have that direction within the zoning bylaw to make sure what you can do and legally do, and clear criteria around what that is. Because if it's simply the fact that it's operating as a rental house, a rental home, irrespective of how many people are in it, now that's every one of those residences in our community that are rental would require a business license. And then you're moving to the next, how many people are living in it determines whether you're going to start to slice it as to whether it's a rental home or is it a rooming house. And that's what I'm hearing is has to go into that zoning bylaw.
But what did they just do in Toronto recently with the Airbnbs and stuff like that? They've formulated a tax on that, and I believe there was licensing required as well if you were going to run an Airbnb. It's pretty much similar to the same thing.
Duncan?
So through your worship, I can speak to Vancouver, and I know that Vancouver has a licensing tax for Airbnbs, and I think for every day that you don't hold a license, it's $1,000 charge or something along those lines. But where I was going, the examples on our agenda are very good examples of where we do have some ability to go in and say, this was developed without a permit, there's no fire suppression, there's no fire rating within this occupancy, where a building was taken from one use and has now been shifted into a dwelling. And Kevin, tempering expectations, this is where we can get involved when they've done something like that. But where there's a home and the bedrooms have been developed and they were part of the original plan, it's a little more difficult. As far as a business license, I think that's something we need to look at, but it needs to fit with the zoning and it needs to be looked at to see the ramifications of that, and we will look at that. We don't require council's direction today. I believe in the past there might have been some discussion about this. As we update our bylaws, as we work with legal, we'll bring that forward.
Councillor Parza?
Yeah, I'm glad you said what you said at the end there. There has been a lot of discussion. Councillor Rogers gave an excellent summary of where I thought council was at on that. And yeah, we don't know there's a ramification, but this is a burning issue in several areas. I socialize with some people in a different part of town than this person lives. And I've facetiously said I take a video and license plate numbers of every vehicle that's parked outside there, and maybe that would be sufficient evidence that it would be that these people are not related, because we could track that down perhaps. But I don't know. I know you're looking at it, but I'm hoping we'll get on with this.
But what I'm hearing is that because they're not related, we have no legal right to enforce within our bylaw, whether it's unrelated or related, living within the residence.
Yes, through your worship, the ability for our bylaw staff to show up and, I guess, ask for driver's licenses to determine who's living there and if they're related. You know, it's not as simple as maybe on its face of saying, well, you're unrelated. You know, there's a lot of investigation that would have to go in, and then we'd have to give them the powers to actually enter and seek that information. So it's problematic.
Councillor Javeco?
So the building permit aspect of it seems to me to be a way that you can do something about these houses. So if you've got a single family dwelling and you suspect that there's a crew house, and I know one specifically that has 8 rooms in it that were built just within the last couple of years, do you have if you suspect that they've done a bunch of work without a building permit, can you go in there and do an inspection and determine if it's legal or not, as far as the building permit?
Mm-hmm. If we have some reason to believe that there was something done and that it might create some form of a hazard, I think we would have every right to ask to enter it.
I'm talking about the building permit
Mm-hmm.
itself. If you've got a house and you suspect there was work done in there without a building permit, can you go and inspect for that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we have good reason to believe that there was something done there that was without a permit, we have the right to go and ask.
What is the good reason?
Usually it's life safety.
Well, I mean, the good reason is to believe. I don't believe we would want our building inspector just going door to door knocking on doors. We would want to actually have a reason to believe that there was something done there, and we would go there.
So if you had complaints about multiple people living in this dwelling, moving out every week alternately, that might be a good reason.
Might be. And again, if it's only got one kitchen, Right, if it has multiple kitchens, then we're talking about something that's possibly been transformed into a multi-family
I'm
dwelling.
talking about the building permit itself. So if it had a bunch of work done that did not carry a building permit,
Yeah,
then that would be an infraction.
yes. And we could go in and we could inspect it, and let's just say that it's 8 bedrooms and it all meets code, and we deal with the fact that they didn't have a permit, and we go through all that. And if it's only got 1 kitchen, it may not change what is happening at that, but we've gone through the process to ensure that it's got a,
I guess the reason I bring it up is because years ago we had some issues with crack houses. And it ended up that legally we sent in the fire inspector and the health inspector, and consequently those crack houses were shut down because they were not compliant with, you know, one or the other or a multiple of reasons. So it seems to me that there has to be an avenue of some sort when you have an extreme situation to deal with it, as opposed to, you know, waiting. And like this has been going on. The residential development committee, seems to me we dealt with that the first year we were elected here.
No.
So am I wrong, or is there a way to proceed with it?
The bylaw today doesn't, what administration is saying, doesn't give us the authority or the ability to enforce an infraction legally, because the bylaw doesn't carry that ability.
But,
Yep.
but the building permit,
So if they did something contrary to renovating the building without a building permit, that's an infraction, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's operating contrary to the bylaw for the number of people or the use of the building.
it would
Unless,
still be a step in the right direction to investigate that, if you had an extreme situation like that.
yeah, no, through your worship, you're absolutely right. We can go there. I guess I just want to say that we can go there, we can deal with that, but that may not change the fact that there's still people staying there. We would go in and inspect it, and if everything was as per the building code, or even if it wasn't, and they managed to fix up, you know, a few things, again,
It's
it
a
might
good
not
first
change.
step.
Yeah.
It's actually taking some action.
I don't know that it is taking some action. I guess I would say that I don't know that the net result, it wouldn't change, perhaps, if there was no
Or
building.
perhaps it would. Glass is half full or it's half empty.
Yeah, no, I guess I'm just asking council what those actions would be if,
Well, if you built something without a building permit, I don't know, I'd have to ask you what the actions would be.
So, and through your worship, definitely, if there was a home that we received a concern or a complaint about that was a 2-bedroom home and there are multiple vehicles in the driveway, you could assume that maybe some renovations have happened. Many of our homes in our community, I'll use Kevin as an example, have 4 or 5 vehicles in the driveway. Cindy has 4 or 5 vehicles in the driveway. Councillor Schumann has 4 or 5 vehicles. And if that home has 5 bedrooms as per the building plans, then that wouldn't warrant or justify us saying, well, I wonder if there's 6 bedrooms or 7. So there's a bit of a fine line here of when you would go in, and you could be inspecting a lot of homes to find out that they were designed with 5 or 6 buildings by an engineer and stamped and are compliant. So I would just like to temper that a little bit to say you could do a lot of walkthroughs. I'm not saying there aren't some in the community that maybe have. We have an excellent example this afternoon where we're looking at putting notice on title, and the next step would be an injunction to go in there if that's where council would like to go, if the owner doesn't modify.
what kind of cause is legal, I guess, for us to say, to Councillor Javekov's point about saying we believe that there's been some work done to this structure that hasn't received a building permit? What do we need to have a reasonable cause to be able to enter a building and ask for authority to enter the building?
well, it goes back to what Councillor Javekov said. If we believe that there's been some work there, then we have that ability through our bylaws to, you know, ask to enter the property and inspect it. And usually these things are brought on either by form of complaint or we're at the property for some other reason, only to find out that, you know, something has happened, and then you start going down that road.
Okay. Councillor Dweck?
So, how many complaints have we had about crew houses, say in the last year?
I'd have to look.
In the last year, the only one, because it's been quiet, the only ones that we've had are the ones we're speaking of with.
So it's not like you have to have a bylaw officer go down the street and knock on doors. You've got a couple of issues to deal with, so it's not insurmountable.
Well, I think the issue, whether it's insurmountable or not, is legally what what's our authority under the bylaws that we have the right to inspect, and that's my own.
Well, if it's established that building permit is authority, and you've got a couple of issues, I mean, you could, well, like you say, if you had a 2-bedroom house originally, and there's a complaint with multiple people in there, unless they're sleeping in bunks like the old camps, which could be, but you know, it's gives you authority to inspect it.
And I guess an assumption that because there's 8 vehicles in there, that there's been something done to the building isn't, in my view, legal to say we have the authority. And that's what my question is, what gives us the legal authority? Do we need to have something besides we suspect there's been something done there? Or do we have something that concrete gives us the ability to enter the building? That's because somebody comes to me and says, look, you got all these vehicles out there. I think you've got something done to the building. I'm coming in. I'm going to say, no, you're not. Show me the legal authority you have to enter my property. And that's my question. So Councillor Rogers and then Duncan. Or Duncan, you go first and then Councillor Rogers.
Sorry. Through your worship, and that if council feels that there's some urgency and we really want to dive into this right now before the zoning, we can follow up with our legal and say, you know, where's that threshold if we want to start inspecting some of these homes and we want to knock on doors and go in, what's that threshold? And we'll confirm that before we enter these homes, but we'd want to do a little more work on that if the council feels there's urgency.
Councillor Rogers and Councillor Dweck.
Yeah, without kind of we're going round and round here again. But
well, not really. We have the legal authority that gives us bylaws that we operate under.
Yeah.
And so we don't do things that we don't have legally the statutory authority to do.
Okay, so that apartment building across the road there, that's owned by somebody. That rental house is owned by somebody. That rental house might be owned by a numbered company. It might be owned by a company. That is a business. So then if it's a rental house, that property should have a business license to operate as a business. So therefore, your authority comes in with your fire department doing an inspection. So all you have to do is identify which of these crew houses or whatever are owned by a business. And if it's business related, then all you have to, I just look at it and go, then pass a bylaw saying that rental houses, as same as commercial rentals, need to have a business license to operate. Therefore, then you get the authority from your fire department to go in and do an inspection on those properties. And at that time, you could identify whether or not the property was in compliance with Bylaw 4287, just like we had done further in the thing. So to me, it sounds like it's fairly simple. Like, we collect taxes on these properties. If it's a numbered company, well, how many people own personally a house that's under a numbered company?
Well, and so that would, how long is a piece of string? Who knows?
Yeah.
But the fact that it's owned by a company, you can't leap to the assumption that it's a rental house.
Or a rooming house.
Or,
wouldn't it be?
well, what if it's owned by my company, but we use it for our personal use? Is that a rental house for me and my wife?
Well, the BC government just passed that law recently that if you have 2 houses, you're going to be paying more in tax. So maybe we might want to get a little bit ahead of the game.
So if we have a residential property in our community owned by somebody that's renting it, that's a business.
It is.
And is that the way our business license operates?
No.
No, and through your worship, it's a big net. There's apartments, there's maybe coach houses, there's maybe people who own another house and rent it out. And I know the intent is dealing with rooming houses, but you might cast that net very large, and we would want to look at that before we created any language.
Councillor Javette.
Yeah.
Bed and breakfast.
And then-
So, getting back to the building permit, we have had examples of where we did inspections on residences because we suspected they didn't comply with the building permit.
Yeah, there's been instances in the past, yeah.
So there is a precedent there. I don't know if you consulted with lawyers for those times, or if you needed to, but you could fall back on those precedents.
Just through your worship, though, I just want to make sure that just because it's a crew house doesn't mean we have reason to believe that it doesn't meet building code. Again, it could or it couldn't. It could be just someone renting out rooms, or if they've gone in and done renovations, and if someone said, hey, I saw somebody doing a bunch of work over there, something doesn't look quite right. Well, yeah, then that, in my mind, is a reason for a building inspector to knock on the door and say, hey, what's happening? But if there hasn't been any construction or anything going on and they're just renting out rooms, we may find, if we go there, that it's just a house with 6 bedrooms, right? So,
Councillor Parsley?
Yeah, well, I obviously I support the notion that we have to make sure what our legal powers are. But I'm just concerned here, and so I'm turning to you, Mary. Because this is a stale-dated item in a sense, in that we put it on our diary some time ago. I just want to know that my assumption has been on this topic that we were wanting staff to explore the business license option as it related to accommodation in the town that was being rented out one way or the other, and there's a broad net of options there, and I'm not sure am I wrong in that assumption, and if I am wrong, then I would like to, under your business later on today, affirm that one way. But does staff have any recollection? Were you exploring that business license option in your bylaw review for this?
yes, so through your worship, exactly that is. When rooming houses and everything were a big issue a couple of years ago, when everything was busy, that's where we got that direction to start looking at options and exploring that, and in conjunction with OCP and then furthermore the zoning bylaw. So yes, we've done some work on that, but I think it speaks to the complexity of the problem too, is that it's that's why it's still a bit of an ongoing issue, and as we work through the OCP and into the zoning.
Yeah, just one. So fine, you're looking at that. So thank you for letting me ask that question. Just one final comment. I know that if I lived in Dawson, in the city, in a residential area, and there was a house that right next to me or very close to me with multiple ins and outs, I would be concerned as well, and would pursue the route through bylaw. So I do think we need to have some improved tools at the disposal of staff to deal with this issue. I don't think these people are raising a frivolous concern. I think it's a very serious concern.
So I'll respond to that because I live on a street that has homes with suites in it, from the corner of my street all the way to for a block and a half. That street is completely full, as well as the yards, with vehicles. Those are 4 or 5 or 6 people living in each one of those, legally. Homes with a suite in it. Mm-hmm. That's the fact of what we have today in terms of developing homes with multiple accommodations for people. We're not single-family homes in the community. As Councillor Rogers said, it's RS2. That's what it is today. And we allow that to happen as part of our development to increase density, and so it creates more opportunities for less cost in servicing lots and things like that. That's just a fact of life. And you drive up that street today, that's exactly what it is. It's just vehicles and packed with people. That's what now if we want to change that, then that's our bylaw and our OCP that allows us to do that.
I have to jump in. I'm not referring to that situation. The whole areas of this town have been developed that way. I'm talking about a single family that's been traditionally a single family dwelling place that now has 5 or 6 people, different people occupying it. That's a very different situation.
Well, and so all of the majority of the homes in one area are all single family, and the ones on the other area are now multiple families. So that's what you get in mixed density that's created by allowing that development in your community. So anyway, so we've had lots of discussion about this item. Is there anything further on new councillor business? Next one. Councillor Schumann.
So I
Thanks, Kevin.
Yep, thank you.
So I am appointed to a couple of things by the mayor, and one of them is the Dawson Creek Watershed Society, and we had a meeting this month, and we're plugging away. We've got some youth programs planned for summer to get down on the creek with youth, to learn about and understand our Dawson Creek watershed. We've also got some funding to do some tree planting, so I think that Kit and Chelsea perhaps will be working with our horticulturist, is that what we call David? Horticulturist, to figure out where is the best place and the best kind of trees to be planting. I also attended the Community Energy Association AGM. I was elected to the board of directors again, and I'm glad I am because I'm the only one outside of the Lower Mainland to sit on this board. So I feel like a big weight on my shoulders when I attend those meetings, trying to be representative of the North. But lots of good things happening there, all sorts of great discussions about what's going on in other communities across the province around alternative energies, energy efficiency, those kind of things. And we actually had a presentation by Liam Edwards from the Municipal Affairs and Housing Ministry, and he was talking about imminent upcoming funding around those kind of things, funding for alternative energies, resource recovery as in gaining heat from the sewer output, those things like that. So that's kind of exciting. Peter Nilsson is my alternate on that when we sit at those meetings, and so hopefully we can get some good stuff out of that for our community. Last Thursday I attended an event at the KPAC. It was put on by our harm reduction committee, but they've got a new and better name, which is escaping me right this moment, but it was around the opioid crisis and how it's impacting our community. Lots of really good information on harm reduction came out of that meeting, and just things on how we can implement these harm reduction efforts and save lives. And last, I want to thank the mayor for arranging the tour with the Soto First Nations. It was an incredible day, hanging out with those people, and it made me super proud as we were touring around, seeing all the stuff that we've done in this community over the last few years. And I mean, we showed off a lot, and it was a really great tour. So I thank you for that. That's all.
Good, thank you. Anything else, Councillor Rogers?
Yep, really quick. I was at the Peace River Regional District recently as part of the feasibility study for trails. We discussed the trails between Dawson Creek and Poos Koopy and Charlie Lake, and a bunch of the regional directors were there, and mayors and everything else, and it was very productive. It's all about the connectivity between communities, and we talked about accessibility to these trails, you know, what they should look like and where they should go. So we had it was a pretty good discussion regarding that, and probably be more to come out of that.
Good, thanks. Think further. Councillor Business. Thank you. Item 4, minutes for regular meeting of May 14th for adoption. Councillor McFadden, Councillor Schumann. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Any business arising of the minutes? 5-1, we have a memo from the Director of Corporate Administration regarding Bear Mountain Nordic Ski Club letter of support. Councillor Parslow, Councillor Jevekov. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6-1, we have a letter from Craig Donnell, who's the CEO of BC Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. And I just want to give a little kind of context of this. So they're moving ahead, obviously, with the construction of the new BCS-BCA with the land that we've given them, and they're moving forward with it. But they wondered if there was a possibility of getting a trailer or unit donated to them that they could use for their cruelty officers that come into town and they need an office space and sometimes a place to stay. I've talked to a couple of the camp providers who were more than willing to help because it's such a great initiative. And so I just wanted to bring it forward to council for your approval to move it forward on that perspective. So Councillor Parslow, move. Seconded Councillor Schumann. Discussion? Councillor Jevek?
So what are we doing? What's happening?
So we'll get a trailer unit donated from either one of the camp provider companies like Black Diamond or Civio or Atco or one of those companies, because they have their older ones that reach their kind of, they're always transitioning and selling them. And so what BCSPCA have asked is this, in the development of the new animal shelter, they would like to put a unit there that they could have a separate space for the cruelty officers that come to the community from the British Columbia SPCA, for a place for them to work and perhaps stay overnight when they're in town.
So we're just giving them approval to put the trailer in?
Yeah, and we can move the letter forward. Councillor Rogers, then Councillor Schumann.
I was just gonna kind of sneaking one in. Zoning, does it meet with our zoning to actually have a crew house on the SPCA property?
Duncan?
So through your worship, accessory dwelling is allowed in that zone.
Okay.
Secondary use.
Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, I want to thank you for going to check that out, because I read this letter and I was like, oh man, we just gave them this land, now they want us to buy them a trailer, and where are we going to get this money from? I'm picturing, you know, like a nice fifth wheel type thing or something, and so thank you.
Just a camp trailer for them to be able to put it on a foundation.
Thank you for going and looking out for that, because I was just like, oh.
And they need an office space, and they said they come into town for 1 day, 2 days, and need a place to stay, and then they were paying for accommodation, so.
Yeah.
Enhance the services. So.
Yes.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6-2, we have a letter from Lorraine Kopus, Executive Director of Spark, regarding Access Awareness Day, June 2nd. Councillor Schumann?
I'd like to move that if we haven't already, that we apply for this $500 to put towards our Access Awareness Day. I think that $500 would buy a lot of hot dogs and hamburgers, and yeah, I think we need to apply for that.
Seconded, Councillor McFadden. Discussion? Duncan?
So we are, as of last week, we started looking as soon as we receive this to apply, so we will be applying.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 6-3, we have a letter from Kelly Kenny, Corporate Officer from the City of Langley, regarding the provincial employer health tax. Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, I'd also like to move that we send a letter to, I'm not sure who we're sending it to the, I don't know, Carol, what's her name, there at the province, to let her know what we are going to be paying, the extras that we're going to be paying with regards to this employer health tax and how that's impacting the city of Dawson Creek. I know that the government has come out very strongly saying they don't really care how it's impacting local governments, but I think that in an effort to, I don't know, show solidarity, that we also send them a letter to let them know the impacts to Dawson Creek. So I'd move that we send them that letter.
Seconded. Councillor McFadden, discussion? So Duncan, the implications for the City of Dawson Creek and the new changes to the employer tax?
So through your worship, the city has impacts. Business that haven't paid MSP in the past will have more significant impacts than the city. So typically our amount paid in MSP, say in 2017, was $195,000. In 2018, they've actually knocked the MSP payment down 50%. So we'll actually have a savings in 2018 of about $100,000. In 2019, they've knocked the MSP payment down again by additional 50, but they've introduced the employer health tax. And so we'll end up paying about $300,000 in 2019. so about $100,000 more than we typically would pay. And then in 2020, it levels out, MSP is gone, employer health tax is implemented, and we'll pay about $259,000. So over 2017, you'll pay about $75,000, I think it was, or 65.
So it is a shift of burden onto our residential taxpayers from the province.
Yeah, it's crap.
Yeah.
Crapola.
Any discussion on the motion that we send this resolution to Carol
James.
James,
Harold James, that's it.
Finance Minister? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.4, we have a letter from Jack Walsh from Hypertension Escape and Janine Cumberland from Paradox Events, who are planning a party. Councillor Rogers.
Let them have their party.
For information.
Okay.
Well, it's
We're
legal
just
for
getting
them to do it. This was an information, Duncan, for them to advise us of what they're planning.
So through your worship, he's asked for council's thoughts. They've shown the event time is 6 p.m. till 10 p.m. That fits within our bylaws. So really, at this point, we have nothing in our bylaw that would not allow this. Now, one thing we have implemented since we've been dealing with some of these special occasion permits is we've asked the liquor inspector to send us notice when special occasion permits are being given to groups within our community, and that gives us that ability to go in with building inspection and ensure that it meets the occupancy and that it's a intended use or permitted use.
I think it's really healthy for us now to be looped into that, just so we have a understanding of what's kind of the activities and events that are going on in our community. Not that I think we should be giving the approval for them, but just so that we have the awareness of what these special events are, and if it does then create an issue, at least we have some data and background to know guiding that information. Councillor Schumann, you had a question?
Did we move this for information, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Did I get a seconder?
I will second.
Seconded. Councillor Schumann, thank you.
I just, thank you to these organizers, the Hypertension and Paradox Events Planning, for sending us this letter and letting us know what's going on. It sounds like a fun event, and I mean, an AC/DC cover band, I'm totally there. So, yeah, I think it's great, and it's nice of them to let us know.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor?
For Special Olympics.
Opposed? Carried.
For Special
Thank you.
Olympics, exactly.
Do you want to continue on, or do you want to take a break? We'll take a 6-minute break, 7-minute break.
6.
Order. Back into the agenda, and our next item on the agenda, we're in report 7.1. We have report number 18074 from the Deputy CFO regarding our BC Transit operating agreement. Councillor Parslow.
I move the report number 18074 from the Deputy Chief Financial Officer regarding the BC Transit 2018-2019 annual operating agreement be received. Further, Council approve entering into the 2018-2019 annual operating agreement between the City of Dawson Creek and BC Transit, effective April the 1st, 2018. Further, that the City agrees to amend the service specifications of the annual operating agreement as outlined in the Memorandum of Understanding dated for reference April the 30th, 2018.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor McFadden. Discussion? Councillor Rogers.
I just got one, just a comment. When I met with the Youth Advisory Council, they were talking about the buses, and they were saying that the buses are right full and the kids are standing, and is there not a bigger bus that they could take to school in the I guess it's a morning, whenever the school's in or out, apparently the buses is right full, and they were asking about a bigger bus. So that's just a comment. I don't know what'll happen with that, because I know that this has been studied recently. But just some information from the Youth Advisory Council that buses are full.
Thank you.
A bus is full.
A bus or two are full.
A buses.
Councillor McFadden.
They do have bigger transit buses operating in Fort St. John, and from time to time they'll float one down if something breaks down here, so it's not impossible. There's only the morning run, and then the 3 o'clock run to Central, number 3 buses is pretty full for some reason. But they do have bigger ones in Fort St. John.
Yeah, so the only other question I'd have is does Dawson Creek, because I've seen the average size of the buses or whatever, but did they actually have extra ones here, or is it just those 3 that they have?
Usually one, I think, eh?
I don't know the answer to that. I know it's leased out through an operator. I could find out if council needs that information.
I'm just pleased to hear the kids are riding the buses.
I thought you would.
Thank you.
It's all revolves around the parking issue at the high school.
Duncan, when's the our operating agreement is for 1 year?
1 year.
From April to April?
Oh, I would have to look at the agreement here.
April 1st.
April 1st.
2018 to
March
April
30th?
To
March
April
31st?
30th, 2008.
It expired, yeah. It's 1 year anyway. I'd have to pull the... I'd have to find it. Sorry, I don't have it handy.
I'll find it. Thank you. Any further discussion?
The only reason for supporting the motion is a 1 year extension,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we have time to think about it next year, if there's an issue for some.
Okay.
Expires March 31st, 2019.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, it's a big financial commitment that you make in terms of transit, and so it's always good to have that lens of review. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Report number 18081 from the Deputy Chief Financial Officer, or a statement of financial information, or Sophie report is, and this is the schedule of financial information. Councillor Javetkov.
I move that report number 18-081 from the Deputy Chief Financial Officer, re 2017 Statement of Financial Information be received. Further, that Council approve the City of Dawson Creek 2017 Statement of Financial Information as presented.
Seconded, Councillor Parslow. Discussion? And this, for the public, anybody that's interested, is the report that gives the statement of remuneration benefits for employees, contractors, and anything that is subject to the freedom of information. And so it's a really good bit of information for us to produce on an annual basis and allow for the public transparency of information. Councillor Parslow.
Yeah, I find the $75,000 a year thing is so stale, dated, and I mean, once upon a time it was a significant amount of money, but now we're capturing people who we wouldn't consider to have a high income in that that amount. So has there ever been any discussion with anyone, any government people around updating that, adjusting that by inflation? I mean, that's been there for, I forget, even maybe when I was school superintendent it was even there. It hasn't changed.
Yeah, Janet.
20 years maybe.
Janet, 15?
About 15 years.
15 years, yeah.
15 years. That might be a UBCM.
Yeah, it's legislated.
Yeah. Okay, just...
Good. Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Report 18082 from the Deputy Chief Financial Officer regarding the climate action
Revenue incentive.
Councillor Schumann.
I move report 18082 from the Deputy Chief Financial Officer regarding the Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program public report be received. Further, that the report be approved as presented.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Parslow. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Report 7.4, we have a report number 18084 from the Deputy Director of Corporate Administration regarding the Post and Row liquor primary license. Councillor Rogers.
I'll move that report number 18-084 from the Deputy Director of Corporate Administration regarding primary license unit number 5 at 11612 8th Street, Post and Road Tavern be received. Further, that council has considered the location, person capacity, and hours of liquor service for the establishment and endorses the comments contained in this report. Further, that as a result of various methods being used to obtain views of the public and none being received, it is assumed that there are no concerns with the liquor primary license, and therefore council recommends the issuance of the license.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Schumann. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.5, we have report 18086 from the Utilities Manager, request for quotation, crushed gravel. Councillor Javetkov?
Move the report number 18-086 from the Utilities Manager, RFQ 2018-06, crushed gravel be received. Further, that council award RFQ 2018-06 to Brocore Construction for $33.95 per ton.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Rogers. Discussion? Councillor McFadden?
A question, not so much about crushed gravel, but about the sand that the street sweeper picks up. I was asked last week if we reuse that or recycle it.
Duncan?
So through your worship, yeah, we reuse the sweepings. Kevin, can you some examples?
So through your worship, we pick it up, we screen it to get any garbage or anything out of it, and then we typically reuse that in laneways and also in excavations, in for backfill and whatnot. So we do reuse the material.
Thank you. A little off topic, Your Worship, but it just popped into my...
Thank you. Councillor Rogers?
Okay, I was really not wanting to second it. I just want to get my hand up.
You put your hand up, you're getting seconded.
I know. But I just wanted to, I had a problem with the crush because last time it was $22.80 per ton, and now it's almost $34. So would there have not been an opportunity to combine the crushed with the washed rock to make it, if you had them both combined together, to possibly have gotten a better deal? Just a question like that.
Duncan?
So through your worship, we're looking at a couple different strategies. We've looked at long-term agreements, trying to decrease that rate. Best we can tell is the price in the market has just gone up. Kevin, have you looked at combining the two?
Yeah, through your worship, we can look at all sorts of strategies, and one of them was to multi-year, which this is a multi-year, thinking that would help. We didn't get as many companies bidding on it than we have in the past. Don't know why. Whether that would have resulted in anything different, hard to say.
Yeah. Councillor Javetkov?
How much crushed gravel do we use annually, roughly?
About 1,000 ton a year.
It's not huge.
No.
Any opportunity to with the Ministry of Highways through their highways maintenance contractor to through them to either purchase or, because I would assume their volumes would be much higher. Have some conversation, discussion with them. For the future, I guess I'm just
yeah.
thinking.
I mean, we are purchasing policy, right? We've gone out, we've gone to tender, and we've received a couple bids. So we're following our policy.
Yeah.
There may be opportunities to do that.
Good. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 7.6 is report 18087 from the Utilities Manager regarding quotation for washed rock. Councillor Schumann?
I move report 18087 from the Utilities Manager regarding the RFQ 2018-07 wash rock be received. Further, the council award a 2-year contract, May 2018 to May 2020, for the supply of 3/8-inch wash rock to Reg Norman Trucking Limited for $54.83 per ton.
Seconded, Councillor Rogers. Just Councillor Javetkov.
I just wondered how much 3/8 we use annually, roughly. And is this what we use on the streets, like when we're sanding?
Yeah, through your worship, so this washed rock is sanding winter, and then we use it in our patching machine in the summers. Primarily, most of it goes towards sanding in the winter. So approximately 2,500 tons a year, depending on the season.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.7, we have report 18088 from the Utilities Manager regarding request for quotations on dust control.
I got it.
Councillor Rogers?
That report number 18-088 from the Utilities Manager regarding request for quotations 2018-08 dust control be received. Further, the council award RFQ 2018-08 to Dakota Contracting for 33 cents per liter.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Javetkov, discussion? Councillor Rogers?
Yeah, I was getting the complaints about the dust from 10th Street from the Youth Advisory Committee before they actually closed it down and stuff like that. And I talked to Kevin a little bit about like the dust control. He said it hadn't been ordered yet. I just wonder why do we order this so late? Because here we are at the end of May and the dust is out there. Should we be working on dust control a little bit sooner?
Spring rains? Duncan?
Through your worship, I'll ask Kevin to answer.
So through your worship, a lot of this revolves around doing some gravel repairs, and then we do the dust control, and you've got road bans that we have to deal with, so when we're ordering gravel, that all comes into play as well.
Oh, okay.
So that's why it's usually around the 1st of June before we start doing a lot of that.
Okay.
And I've had a concern raised by a resident on 106th Avenue east of 8th Street that they face that because of the amount of traffic kind of connecting it behind there, and they get it fairly bad. And so it's an area that gets the calcium, and we really want to be concerned for them.
Yeah. And actually, it all holds the road together too, those couple roads as well.
Yeah. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.8, we have report 18089 from the Utilities Manager regarding request for quotation of gravel screening. Councillor Schumann.
Here you go, Councillor McFadden.
What?
This is the gravel screening that they use from the gravel they pick up. So I move report number 18089 from the Utilities Manager regarding request for quotations 2018-09 gravel screening be received. Further, that council award the RFQ 2018-09 gravel screening to Reg Norman Trucking for $9.21 per cubic meter.
Okay, seconded, Councillor McFadden. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 7.9, we have report 18092 from the Chief Building Inspector regarding 1041 Alaska Avenue, suggesting a note against the land title. Councillor Parslow.
The report number 18092 from the Building Inspector re 1041 Alaska Avenue suggested note against land title section 57 be received. Further, the building department and owner be provided with an opportunity to be heard with respect to the following recommended steps to obtain compliance with the BC Building Code and Building Regulation Bylaw number 4287. 1. The building owner was to hire a professional architect registered in the province of BC to provide a stamped code review that provided recommendations on how to fix the deficiencies. 2. The building owner was to submit a building permit application along with stamped plans. 3. The building department would conduct a plan check to verify the plan meets code and then would issue the building permit. 4. Deficiencies would be corrected by the owner and verified by the architect.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Javetkov. Discussion. Councillor McFadden.
In the recommendation, I don't see a timeline for when this remedial action should be completed. I would think there should be a date.
Duncan?
So through your worship, and I'll ask Kevin, I believe the first step is giving them an opportunity to speak with council.
Yeah, so through your worship, I'm just thinking about the timelines. If in the past we have, I mean, this process is really to make sure that there's a notice on title and to protect the future owners, or if they were to sell the property, to put notice that it hasn't been, it doesn't meet code or has some deficiencies. So that's the primary purpose of a notice. I'm actually unclear whether we need to put a time frame on it or not, but that's a good point.
Councillor Javekov?
So if you're putting a notice on title, wouldn't that just stay there until the property changes hands?
No, through your worship, it stays on there until it's rectified. So once, if the owners were to go and do everything that we're requesting, they could then come to us and say, you know, here's all the proof, it's all been done, you guys have inspected it, and then they can do it's a process to get it removed off title. I can't remember.
But if they didn't correct the problem, it would stay on there until somebody was going to buy the building.
Well, it'll stay on there permanently until it's removed. And correct, Brenda? Yeah. So that whole purpose is so that if someone goes to purchase it, they're aware that there is some deficiencies. But even if they buy it, that notice still remains on title
until it's rectified, until it's
Similar to the encroachment.
What?
Duncan?
Throwing that in.
Was that a question or a statement?
No, it's just a statement.
That was a sarcastic statement.
It's just similar to the encroachment problem.
Rule him out of order.
I was going to direct it.
Throw him
until I
out.
wasn't sure
Throw
if it
him
was a
out.
question or not. Further questions on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Was that opposed?
No, I was not
Oh,
opposed.
sorry.
It was delayed.
Oh, sorry.
affirmative, sorry.
So I have a question about this
Go
whole
ahead.
thing. So, like, is there any concern about having this building not meeting the code? Like, it's one thing to put it on title to make people aware if they're looking at it, but you know, there's possibly fire issues or health issues or other issues. Is there a way to deal with that, or?
Duncan?
So through your worship, first step is the compliance piece, right? Where we work with the building owner, whether it be a permitted use or zoning or building inspection, to help them get to compliance and help them understand how to get to compliance. They also get the opportunity to address council, I believe, Kevin. Next step becomes the enforcement, and whether council would like to go down that road if there's a health and safety risk. If the landowner doesn't deal with it, then you're going for injunctions to actually have that ability to go ensure that use doesn't continue. We're not at that point, and I don't know that we've ever gone to the injunction point, Kevin?
Not that I can recall, but I would want to speak to the fire department and the building inspector and just determine whether that's something that we'd want to pursue.
This is the first step in a process.
Didn't we deal with that on that little apartment building on 17th Street? They called it
Robin's Nest.
Yeah.
That, through your worship, that one many years ago had a myriad of problems between health, fire, a whole bunch of issues, and it had got to such a state that yeah, something needed to be done on that one. That was a number of years back.
Thank you. Further questions, comments? All those in favor?
We already did that.
Oh, sorry, you're right, yeah.
Well, we just doubled down.
Just want to double count.
Just to make sure.
Show up on the schedule of financial information that we got extra pay for voting twice. 710, report 18093 from the Development Services Manager regarding temporary use permit for 1015 99th Avenue. Councillor Parslow.
The report number 15220 from the Development Services Manager, temporary use permit 1801, Iron Relics, 1015 99th Avenue be received. Further, that Council provide approval in principle for temporary use permit 18-01 and direct staff to proceed with public notification in the newspaper.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor McFadden, discussion. Councillor Schumann?
Is there any effort, I mean, I see it's going to public notification in the newspaper, but I feel like for the residents that live along that street, the residential area sort of across from it, I feel like we should be giving them some notice specifically. I know we had a young fellow that lived over there that was, I mean, he was complaining that it was Lone Star's music, but perhaps it wasn't Lone Star's music. I don't know how long this activity has been going on over at this establishment, but I feel like we ought to, you know, make a little bit of extra effort to notify the residents that are going to be living adjacent to this. I feel like it could get to be a noisy affair. And I also noticed that they're saying that it's a coffee bar. I did see pictures where it appeared to be a beer bar. And so I'm wondering that, I mean, I know that has nothing to do with us. They have to get their liquor permits from somewhere else, et cetera, but I don't know. I feel like it should be, notification should be made further and more personally to that neighborhood.
Sure.
Duncan?
So through your worship, I think Brenda can speak to the process.
Through your worship, notification to the surrounding properties has already taken place. It was just that the advertisement in the paper was missed. So that's, this was just providing notification to council. We actually did change the process for the temporary use permits, where it could go, once all the requirements of the application were met, then staff could go immediately to the public consultation process, including council, and then once that process was complete, then it would be the first time to council at a meeting for approval.
Oh, okay.
Duncan?
Anyway, so the notification has been completed.
Duncan?
So through your worship, this is a good example of a bit of a process where staff identified, I guess you could call it a non-conforming use. We're concerned with the building inspection parameters of this, and went in and said, you know, this is a shop essentially, or industrial use, and now you're making it a public occupancy use. Went in, worked with the building owner. The building owner has done some updates, or shown that they're going to do some updates to ensure the safety of people participating in that type of activity in that building, and so it's just a good example of going through that process and trying to get that compliance, as opposed to the notice on title and the other process that we go through. Kevin, anything you want to add on just that process?
On the TUP or?
Yeah, just and I mean, it's a special occasions permit, which is issued through the liquor distribution branch. We're now being notified on those so that we can follow up like we did in this circumstance. This one we weren't notified on. We found it through Facebook or something like that and pursued it that way. But moving forward, we'll get that notification so that we can ensure that, you know, if it's a shop that was built and constructed and designed to be a shop, if you're going to house 20 or 30 people and have music, or coffee bar or whatever, art show, that it conforms and it's safe.
Thank you. Councillor Schumann?
Are there those restrictions on the amount of people that can congregate there? Like, did I read it in there?
Yeah, so go ahead, Kevin.
I was just going to say, through your worship, that so we have kind of a two-part thing there, I believe, is one through the building inspection. The building itself would have an occupancy limit based on, you know, its size, its egress, and those types of things. And then secondly, I would assume through the liquor licensing, if special occasions, there would probably be maybe a different occupant load that would be restricted to.
And it does say that an occupancy load has been determined by an architect for events.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I appreciate the idea of mixed use and, you know, doing other things. And I appreciate their efforts to comply. And so that's what it is. 3 years sounds like a long time for a temporary anything, but that's just me.
But also council has the authority as a temporary use permit to reconsider if there are significant issues that come forward and are brought to council's consideration, then I'm assuming there's a process for us to deal with a temporary use permit. Councillor Roger?
Yeah, I just want to say, what's it zoned for right now?
Through your worship, that is actually light industrial area.
Okay, yeah, because, well, it used to be Naden sheet metal, EMCO used to be in there, and I think two-stroke painting's in there. I was just trying to figure out where this all actually fit in, because there was a comment here. At this time, staff do not support rezoning the property to a commercial zone.
Because we're in our LCD.
No, that was below that picture, so, I don't know, I just thinking that, or, you know, is it a coffee shop, or is it a bar, or is it a clubhouse? Even if it is a clubhouse, does that fit in with, the current zoning right now? Can I ask that to staff, please?
Yeah, go on.
And so I'll jump ahead of that question and confirm with Brenda. Brenda, this still needs to come back to council one more time after we post in the newspaper and receive that feedback. So as far as the term and the 3 years, all of that will be firmed up in the final report. Your question regarding the commercial use in that zone, I'll maybe ask Kevin to answer that. And I talked a little bit, so he might have forgot the question.
So through your worship, it doesn't meet the current zoning, that's why they're going through the temporary use permit, and so Alex has suggested that process, so obviously the uses will fit within that.
Okay. Anything further, Councillor Parslow?
Looks like a very interesting project and location, the sort of place I would go to.
Yeah, it looks
I
very...
look forward to its development.
Further discussion, further comments? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. That ends our reports. Item 8, bylaws. 8.1, bylaw enforcement, bylaw notice enforcement amendment, bylaw 4378 for adoption. Councillor McFadden, Councillor Schumann. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 8.2, municipal ticket information amendment, system amendment, bylaw 4379 for adoption. Councillor Parslow, Councillor Schumann. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 8.3, we have report 18091 from the Development Services Manager regarding the 8th Street Bridge Dawson Creek Park dedication amendment, bylaw 4381 for first 3 readings. Councillor Parslow.
The report number 18091 for the Development Services Manager, the 8th Street Bridge, Dawson Creek Park Dedication Amendment, Bylaw number 4381/2018 be received. Further, Dawson Creek Park Dedication Amendment, Bylaw number 4381/2018 being given first 3 readings. And further, the alternate approval process be the option chosen to obtain the approval of the electors, including the following requirements. The deadline for receiving elector responses is 30 days following the second published notice. The elector response form attached to this report is approved, and the estimated number of eligible voters in the city of Dawson Creek is 7,330.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Schumann. Discussion? Duncan, explanation, just...
So through your worship, this is 0.62 acres off of the east side of Kin Park, the west side of 8th Street, in order to accommodate the province's plan to put a bridge there. So there is the archway and there is the brick structure there, and they've indicated that they'll relocate that or construct a new one as this strip takes that piece out. So yeah.
And so for people that are watching today, it's just in anticipation of the replacement of the 8th Street culverts with a bridge by the Ministry of Transportation. They'll require that additional space there to move into the park a bit, and that's the reason for this bylaw change today.
Yes.
Good. Any discussion, further discussion, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So that gets through our bylaws. Mayor's business. Thanks for Councillor Schumann last meeting and allowing me to miss a meeting and go to Victoria, so I'll kind of run, Councillor Wilbur, sorry, who chaired the meeting, thank you. So first item, we had McHappy Day we participated in on May 2nd at McDonald's, and great cause in terms of raising some money for Ronald McDonald House, and had a lot of fun. Working that window is not as easy as it looks, and those folks that work that window and the drive-through know what they're doing. I got a ton of eyes and making sure I didn't forget the straw. And so there was some pressure on to make sure you deliver in the appropriate way, and it was a lot of fun, and really appreciate the opportunity to participate.
And nobody came in and yelled at you because they got a double
They
double
loved-
instead of a double
No,
team
I
or
had
something?
taken no credit for that. So a couple of weeks ago or a month ago, I attended Vancouver on behalf of our community, and we received the British Columbia SPCA Humane Community Award for 2018 as a result of our animal responsibility bylaw, and it was really, really amazing to see the kind of attention that the City of Dawson Creek has received across the province for how progressive the animal responsibility bylaw is for our community with the cats, and you know, the changes in what's happening in the community right now with respect to just the feral cats and cats alone. The BC Dawson Creek South Peace SPCA say the number of cats that are now turned into the SPCA that were unidentifiable prior to the bylaw was like 70% of the cats coming in that were not identifiable. That number has dropped now down to about 30%, I think. It's unbelievable how effective that spay and neuter program and the identification has been. I think 70% that were coming in weren't spay or neutered, and that's down to about 30 or 40% now. The number that have been unidentified who were turned in prior to our bylaw was like 10% of them come in that were actually identified either through a tattoo or microchip. That's up to about 40% today. And so it's completely transformed the dynamics of feral cats and the cats in our community, and absolutely very progressive. And everybody that came up to me from across the province at the night we received this award were really, really complimentary of our community in terms of the work we've done. And so I was really honored to be able to accept this award on behalf of the city and council for being the Humane Community Award for 2018 for the British Columbia SPCA. One Saturday a couple of weeks ago, I got asked to attend the 4-H outdoor living judging, and it was just an opportunity where the kids who are in 4-H get to experience judging and how they're going to be judged on their activities they take on in 4-H. And so they asked the mayor if I'd come down and spend 2 or 3 hours at the exhibition grounds, where they had a bunch of stuff that I participated in and helping. And it was a lot of fun for 3 or 4 hours with the kids and the folks from 4-H, and appreciate the opportunity and the invitation. We attended Fort Nelson, the North Central Local Government Association meeting in Fort Nelson 2 weeks ago. I went up and spent the first day on a tour of the Fort Nelson First Nations. There was a number of tours organized, and I toured the Fort Nelson First Nations with them for the entire day. It was really amazing to see that community and what they've done to build community and infrastructure and health and education and social programs and stuff as additional burdens of governance that they have in a First Nation community versus what we do, because they take it all on, as well as culture and language. And but I was really enjoyed spending the day with Chief Harrison Dickey and a number of their councillors, and we learned a bunch of different things in the community, as well as they taught us hand games in their community center, and it was just a lot of fun, and I really appreciated the opportunity to do that. And then obviously a day and a half at the North Central Local Government Association. One of the big items that we brought forward on behalf of the Peace River Regional District to NCLGA was the Southern Mountain Caribou, and how important that topic is as it relates to the herds in the Northeast that are being impacted or are impacted by this potential federal legislation around habitat protection, and the federal Minister of Environment, who has that accountability to deal with any species at risk under the Species at Risk legislation, and So there's a bunch of concern about the southern mountain caribou and the different herds around the Kennedy, the Burnt, the Quintet, and so anyway, some of them, and if that legislation, if that regulation or legislation gets enacted, it has a huge impact for us in our communities around social and economic aspects as well, where timber harvest, mining, natural gas development, recreation, tourism, our watershed for the Kiskatna watershed, the Bear Hole Lake is in the Quintet designated area. So there's a bunch of stuff, and we just wanted to make sure we got a resolution in front of the North Central Local Government Association indicating how we want to ensure that we as communities are engaged and involved as well in that process with the federal and provincial Minister of Natural Resource Operations. So anyway, it was a good day and a half, and really thought it was good for us to be in Fort Nelson. Fort Nelson, Northern Rockies is really a struggling community, and lots of stuff going on there that's really impacting their community in a not a good way, struggling with no economic opportunities, and obvious in the community how quiet it is. I think it was a real good opportunity for us from North Central Local Government to be up there and help support their community in a way that brought a little bit of activity in for 3 or 4 days. So anyway, it was a good time, and proud of Councillor Wilbur, who's the outgoing president of the North Central Local Government Association, done a great job of representing herself and our community as the president, and I'm sure she'll do a great job as past president. I'd taken the opportunity this past winter, and that was as a result of a meeting I had with Premier Horgan in December of last year, and he talked about how he really was important from his view that because he has nobody in cabinet from northern British Columbia, to have the eyes, ears, and contact with his government. And he talked about that, how it was important for him to try to find ways to build relationships with us. And so I took the opportunity to engage the South Peace mayors and electoral area directors in January, February. I think I brought it to council, and we had organized a proposed series of meetings in Victoria with the various ministers, and we were engaged Blair Lekstrom to help us get to those ministers. And so 2 weeks ago we were down in Victoria, had a meeting with the Minister of Transportation, the Minister of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations, as well as the Minister of Energy Mines, Minister Mungal. And it was really beneficial for us to have that show of support by every one of the mayors, and the electoral area directors went down, and we spent 2 days down there meeting with the ministers. Minister of Transportation, we really talked about how important the highways maintenance standards, the specs that they're having for their highways maintenance contractors, and we want to make sure that we get some opportunity to give some input into that. We've heard, I think all of us, about how concerns residents raise about the condition of our highways in the wintertime and highways maintenance, and we wanted to provide some input into the minister for those specs, and that was very worthwhile. We also talked about Greyhound a bit and the removal of that service. We met with the Minister of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations, and we talked about the southern mountain caribou and the impacts of it and how important it is for us. This is a heating up topic, and I know our industry guys are really concerned about it, certainly LP in that regard. So we just want to make sure that we're not saying that this isn't an important topic. We just want to be involved in it. And then we met with Minister Mungal, and we talked about how we need to find a way and a structure to build so that we're involved and engaged with ministry as it relates to the development of the upstream assets, the Montney in northeastern British Columbia. We're hearing from some of the residents out in the rural areas who are saying, wait a minute, the cumulative effects of this is just overwhelming us, and they don't feel like they're getting a voice. And so we had a really great conversation with the minister, Paul Jeekins, the CEO of the Oil and Gas Commission was there, and her various ministry of representatives, and we had a really good discussion with her. And I had a follow-up call from Paul Jeekins afterwards, and they were up last week and had a presentation to the Peace River Regional District and talked about it, and talked about how what a really strong message they received from us as a delegation when we went down and met with the minister. And they're looking at putting a structure together now for us in northeastern British Columbia to ensure that we see effective, responsible development, but a way to ensure that social responsibility along with environmental and economic are considered as well. And it made such an impression that the deputy minister, her deputy minister, came to the meeting at the Peace River Regional District on Thursday, Dave Nicolishan, with Paul Jeekins. And so I think they heard us, and it was really worthwhile, obviously, for us to have that audience in front of the ministers to talk about how important it is for us to have the development of this stuff in our region. Councillor Schumann?
So you mentioned that you met with the Minister of Transportation. Recently, like I think just over the weekend, I saw a news report that the ministry was considering putting in BC Transit instead, like to take over in some way from Greyhound, and I guess that came out of the regional district meeting, or?
So it was there was a conference call with the minister, and I wasn't able to call into it because I forget what the stuff was, but Councillor McFadden I think did. But I think the gist of what they're talking about, the minister is proposing, is they currently have a transit service runs from Prince George to Prince Rupert, and that was as a result of that Highway of Tears. And so it's a subsidized service by the province, and I think the municipalities over there also kick in. What they're proposing to alleviate the lack of service for northern British Columbia, Northeast, and the Northern Rockies is to bring a transit service in that will provide a link from Prince George to Dawson Creek, and then Dawson Creek to Northern Rockies. But it won't provide a link into those smaller communities, Tumbler Ridge Inn or Mackenzie Inn. It just will be that main corridor service, and it looks like they're planning a weekly service, so it would come up to Dawson, Northern Rockies, back and down. It would be about a week it would take for them to do the loop. So they're proposing that, and I think that's what they're considering. But I haven't had a chance to get into the details of it, and I will now that we're back.
Thanks.
As Councillor Schumann mentioned, we had organized a tour with the Saulteaux First Nations to council, and I really appreciate everybody doing their best to participate in that last week or the week before. And it's about creating this relationship with them, and they've been very helpful for us, the Treaty 8 Tribal Association, on our health services and all of that. And so to me, an opportunity to build that relationship with all of the Treaty 8 First Nations will help strengthen some of those core services we provide in our community around health and education and economic opportunities. And one of the things I've broached with them and have talked to them about is perhaps leveraging a partnership with LP, and they've got their nursery out at Twin Sisters and joint nursery with Saulteaux and West Moberly, and if there was a way that we could find a way to leverage that heat that's produced at LP into a nursery in our community in partnership with them, and it's that urban economic development zone potentially. I think it's got huge potential and huge opportunities for creating that partnership and economic opportunities and diversifying it that much more in our community. So it was a very strong day, and I know they really appreciated it. And we had the Peace Energy gave a presentation over lunch about solar, and we toured the water and sewer infrastructure. And I know that Chief Cameron and councillors that were there, Councillors Owen and Paquette and Parenteau, were really appreciative of us reaching out and starting to build that contact with them and establish the relationship. Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, it was a super day. So you mentioned this idea about resource recovery, as in heat recovery from industry, to do something like that. So when I was at my, when I called into my Community Energy Association meeting, and the fellow from the ministry was talking, he was talking about exactly that, these out-of-the-box ideas, and that's what they're wanting. They're wanting us to come to them with crazy out-of-the-box ideas about recovering waste heat and doing something great with it. So keep that in your mind.
So I think first thing we do is we'll try and come up with an MOU and a policy, and then with Saulteaux, and then bring it forward and start to try to find a way to do a feasibility study and explore the opportunity. Yeah. Thank you. Jeff Lexstrom was here today as a delegation under the School District 59 no parking. It's a reconsideration of a request that we had 2 weeks ago, or a month ago, I guess, when the request was made, and it was received for information. That report, Brenda? Sorry?
Sorry, I was...
Yep, correct. It was received for
It
information.
was just simply received for information. Council didn't give a recommendation one way or the other. So I want to bring it back on the table for today. Councillor Schumann.
Well, I thought we had already done this. I guess I was sleeping that day. I totally thought we had done this. But I would move that we grant their request. It sounds like a safety issue for them. All of those businesses along there have ample parking for their customers, as far as I can see. And I mean, I know we talk about the big can of worms, but if it's a safety issue, then I think we have to do something about it. So I would move that we grant them their parking, no parking signs for that area, the 200 meters or whatever it is that they were asking.
Thank you. Second, do I have a seconder? Councillor Javekov? Councillor Javekov?
So I saw a map with all the stop signs or no parking signs there. I was confused because there are so many different colors in on the thing, but isn't there already provisions for no parking?
Duncan?
So through your worship, there are a few, I have it here, yeah, thanks, Kevin. There are a few different areas in there. There's some access, so there's no parking in front of entrances and exits. There's also some fire hydrants. There's no parking in front of hydrants. And then there is a large area on the entrance and the exit of the school district bus area that is no parking, and we did that a couple years ago. Kevin?
Through your worship, the no parking for the school district was done within the last 6 months to a year.
There you go. And then there's, just in that area, that is the only significant no parking zone.
So it's easy to accommodate.
So
council decision, right?
Yeah.
Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the size of these vehicles is what the problem is. We've got all these really big trucks parked along there, and then the buses, they're not small either. So I think, like when he was talking about when they come out and they got to turn and get around there, and I think it's different than maybe other areas where vehicles are having problems navigating around the big trucks, but with the buses, I think it would significantly increase that difficulty for them.
Okay. Further discussion, Councillor Rogers?
Well, I was just wondering, like, they were just talking about the sand trucks. Like, what happens when the sand trucks aren't in town anymore? Do we change it back? And then the only other thing that, because I'd asked them if they've talked to the other businesses that are along that road, and that I think, shouldn't we actually ask the other businesses that are along that road? Because, Jeff's saying, yeah, we did. Well, I don't know, did you?
No.
Because I don't think so. I'd like to hear from the other businesses that are along that road that are going to be affected. That's all. And if we could.
I guess just thinking about it in terms of, traveling that route, going past up to United Spring or going up to, I don't remember seeing much traffic parked along there, other than up around United Spring and Break, where they have much more heavy traffic, and you see the trucks parked either on both sides of the road up there behind Canadian Tire on either side, just trying to access United Spring and Break. But I don't recall seeing much in front of the forest area, in front of the auto supply place, or in front of the post office. But that's just my own recollection, and I haven't talked to the businesses.
Yeah, because my thinking is United Spring and Break, like, they don't have ample parking there. You got enough parking to get like maybe one truck in at the front, but everything else is for small pickups and smaller vehicles. So the only other spot they got is actually in front of their property, and that would take up one vehicle. And then what if they had 2 or 3 guys in? They need that space to go down the road.
But this no parking wouldn't impact that, because you got post office in between there.
That was my...
Right. Yeah, but what if it's always the what if. Where's that string? If somebody needed to pull in there, but there was no parking there, they're going to park further down the road. So that opportunity, we're taking the opportunity away from that business for people to park further down the road.
Like I say, I'm just going from
USB, like that is United Spring and Break for the bigger commercial trucks and stuff like that. And they don't have, they got parking in the back, but if you've ever been in the back, it's plugged.
Like I say, my only recollection of seeing vehicles parked down there for United Spring and Break is down by Canadian Tire on that west side, and then in front of their own shop on the east side. But, just my own.
I always thought they were just going to the end of when they parked there.
Further discussion, Councillor Jeveka?
So would it be a problem to go and ask, I think the businesses that would be impacted there is United Spring and Amco. I don't know about any others.
The auto parts place and the
Truck
industrial
accessories.
forestry. Yeah.
Which they
But
all
Auto
have.
Parts has lots of room there to park. Like they've got that whole inland
Yeah.
parking lot.
Would it,
Duncan?
Through your worship, if council wanted to solicit some feedback, we would speak with everybody on 7th Street and that between 116th and 120th. If
Your
council-
suggestion we table this until we have feedback, Brenda?
And just the correct process would be just to refer it to staff to,
Get the feedback and bring it back for the next meeting? Okay. As council, does somebody want to make that?
I'll move that.
Duncan?
So I would just tweak it a little bit. I don't know that next meeting would be enough time, just with the agenda deadline. You'd have 1 week to solicit feedback and gather, so we may want to make it a second meeting.
So
Do this at the end of June when school's
Yeah, well,
So we give it to administration to get the
Yeah.
feedback back from the affected businesses there and bring it back to council for our information at the next first earliest possible date.
perfect.
Thank you. You're making that by way of a motion, and I had a
Yes,
seconder
I'll
to
do
it.
that.
Did I have a seconder? Yes. Discussion on the referral, and all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And so we'll bring it back at the earliest possible. Now, I was wanting to bring back for reconsideration the motion that was made at the last meeting, but I want to ask administration first to give an update before I do that.
Sure, sorry, and I wasn't sure, and I was going to ask Brenda, but we had a delegation in regarding 102nd Avenue and removing the culverts and creating a bridge, and I don't know that there was a specific ask in there, but it was around removing that bridge, or they also mentioned just not having access to that area until we could pay for a bridge.
Like, they wanted us to rip out the
I
bridge. so
thought
that-
she said, close 102nd Avenue and remove the culverts.
And the
That's what I
bridge, so
heard.
that it.
That was her ask, yeah.
All right.
There was also the cement blocks that she talked about, moving them.
Yeah, so Kevin had actually followed up after, so maybe
Okay.
Kevin can update.
Thanks. So through your worship, I followed up with a group just outside after they had their delegation. Just start with the concrete blocks that they're referring to. There seems to be some confusion that there is a bridge there now, that we've put 2 culverts and concrete blocks in there. That's not actually the case. There's 2 culverts in there. The concrete blocks that are in between the culverts were simply put in as an erosion control type of stability thing. So I know they referred to just pulling those out. So and then they see the walkway on the south side of 102nd Avenue, and I think that's why they think it's a bridge, just because the way it's constructed, it kind of does look like that. So anyways, I had a good follow-up discussion, just kind of explained our flood mitigation work, where that's at, when that's possibly coming. We've got their contact information, so when we get the final report for flood mitigation, admin will contact them and ask them to come in so they can be here. Then after that, they can get a copy of the report. Spoke about that and just kind of the process. They were fairly anxious, or certainly assumed that we would be doing something there prior to next spring, and I said that would be unlikely just due to the process, the budget process and all that. Their comments to me were then fine. Their suggestion goes back to what they did mention in the delegation, that we should just close 102nd Avenue and just tear out the culverts and leave it as an open channel to protect their properties. So that was the discussion had.
Okay, so the request is twofold then, that we open up 102nd Avenue for flow, and and the other piece was to, or was that just it? That's it.
That was the main ask, yes.
So Councillor Schumann?
Can I just ask Kevin another question? So when the water did rise, the city was down there clearing debris from those culverts, I'm assuming. And then once, the water was backing up, and then we did those other efforts with the pumping of the water over top of that I think that we acted really diligently in this year, trying to make sure that it was kept clear. The area is still flooded. I don't know, and I guess that's where this mitigation work comes in. I don't know that, just opening it up and shutting down the road and opening up that channel is going to reduce anything. It doesn't guarantee for 1 second that those houses aren't going to flood again.
And I, through your worship, I had that exact conversation with the group, is that I mentioned that even if we had no culverts, no bridges, anything along that channel, that, just the way the weather is, I wouldn't personally guarantee that there still wouldn't be a problem beyond that. There's just no way to guarantee it anymore.
But 17th Street, and I don't know this, and that's why I'm really anxious about the flood mitigation planning, but at 17th Street holds that water back into that area that it always has been through, in behind Reg's, up into the golf course, and opening it up might just allow a whole bunch more water to flow in that much more quicker. And I don't know, I'm no expert at all, that's just a lay observation. So I think what we have to do is say we've had a request, and it'll be part of the ongoing mitigation process of planning how and what happens to those that creek bed and allowing the water to flow with the infrastructure that we build or use to improve it.
Yeah.
So we have a request from delegation, and so I would ask at this point that we receive it for information, I guess.
I'll move that.
Seconded, Councillor McFadden. Discussion on the motion to receive the delegation's request for information. Councillor Parslow?
Well, it seems to me that we need a lot more information before we make any decisions. It seems to me that we need to look at what the potential traffic flow would be, where the traffic could go if we take out that section of 102nd Avenue. We might be causing some problems, I don't know, congestion at other places. So we need to do all that stuff. It seems, though, that their request, from my lay observations, there's a bottleneck there, and that's why a pumper was put in. A pumper was put in to lower the volume of water going over the road. And this same thing, if you take away that 102nd bridge, you would have a open channel. You wouldn't have had to have that pumper in, I'm guessing. But who knows what damage that might do if there's a greater volume of water going through into the rest of the properties west of there. So it's a multifaceted thing, and I don't know, when will we get this report from this group? Any idea?
Yeah, through your worship, we chatted with them on Friday. It was anticipated to be, by the end of this month. During the floods in the Fraser Valley, they were hired on or asked to come and work with the province, our consultants, because the province didn't have adequate flood mapping for that area. So the consultants that we have actually went in and were doing some emergency work for the province. So that delayed our project a little bit, but they said that they would have a draft to me probably within 2 weeks. So the intent is we'll get that draft. Staff will have a time to go through it, and any questions or comments, and then they'll get a final report for us, and then they'll come up and do a presentation to council with the final report.
Yeah.
So Councillor Schumann, then Councillor Javeka.
So to Kevin, this report, is it going to lay out, here's what you need to do? Is that what we're expecting in that report to come in at? They're going to come to us and say, this to mitigate this flood risk?
Well, I'm hoping that there's going to be some recommendations in there. The RFP asked for bylaws, policies, and infrastructure options to help mitigate flooding. So again, it's high level concept. It's not getting into the details, because it's not, you don't haven't done that work yet. But the idea is to go through this, look at the system, and then trying to identify things that could be changed or altered to help mitigate. And then when you have some of those options, then you can dive into that option and start to get into the details of those options. So that's what I'm expecting come out of that.
Councillor Javeka?
You know, I think we have to wait till the report, but to me, it's obvious that there's that the water is being, it's not flowing freely through those two culverts. So I think we have to have that as part of our solution for the future. We either put in another 6-foot culvert or a bridge or something so that water isn't backing up, because you know, when the water is above the top of the culvert, it's not flowing freely. There has to be freeboard there. So, you know, I think we have to keep it in the forefront of stuff that we have to do. And if we could do it, you know, prior to next season, that would be great. If we can't, I think that pumping system, I mean, you know, obviously that works because it was drawing water, cleaning water out of the golf course. So obviously it is a solution, but it's temporary. I mean, you don't want to have to do that every year.
Yeah.
So, you know, we know that the water isn't going adequately through there, so it's got to be on the list of priorities to do.
Councillor Rod?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and just one point too, like closing 102nd Avenue, yeah, you could close it, and then people could drive a block up and then drive through that residential neighborhood. So I fully expect to hear a whole pile of feedback coming from those folks too. And, you know, the road goes through there because that was what it was initially thought of during the whole transportation program, was make that road go through there rather than through a commercial or residential property.
It's there.
I think it's honestly, I think it's a really good conversation, and we're learning every day every spring about how important the planning is. And this year was one example of how now you've identified that the 15th Street Bridge and the 10th Street Bridge has improved infrastructure, and next year the 8th Street Bridge will improve flow, and just understanding how we continue to improve it to minimize and mitigate the risk for those property owners at that pinch point that we're seeing.
Such a low area.
But it's, but the problem is you open it up, you don't know what it does downstream, and you don't know what it's going to do if you open it up and allow more water in there from that backup in that floodplain that exists today. So I'm no expert. So Councillor Parslow, then Councillor Quebec.
Yeah, I thought, I said this before, the city did a good job with these temporary measures. But I don't know, some things tend to just, if I use the word slide, it's not meant to be a criticism at all, but let's say it another way. I would like this put in our diary. I'd like us to have once we've got this report, to give some coherent answer to these people after we've had this report. So if we can put it in our diary or something like that, as to...
So my suggestion is going to be that once we have this flood mitigation plan come forward, then that'll engage us to say, okay, now what next? And we've got some money tucked into reserves, we've got some plans for the future, we've got to talk about it in budget. So I'm assuming that's going to drive some action from us as a result of that, in terms of getting that report that will drive next steps, I would think.
No, that's fair comment. Just one last topic here related to this. Several people have spoken to me about the seeming erosion of the bank, the creek bank, on both the west side of 17th Street, okay, and the east side. I haven't gone to look at it myself, but they're saying that they think there's a whole bunch of stuff going to collapse and it's going to expose something. I forget what they were telling me, but have you got any comment?
Which crossing on 17th is that? Is that on the south or north? Because there's two.
Yeah. The recollection I have is on the west side of 17th Street. Do you know where the guy who used to fix teeth?
Dr. Bones.
Dr. Bones?
Okay, so the North Creek crossing there.
Yes. I'm with you now.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all to do with that.
Okay.
And then to the east of 17th Street as well.
Okay,
So
I'll
just
follow
something
up.
to have a check.
Yep.
Yeah.
Councillor Jabecko?
Just a question, when you were pumping across 102nd there, was there any effect downstream with that extra volume and
Through your worship, no, we didn't get any reports, anything noticeable. The only things that probably would have occurred in the immediate areas is possibly a bit of an erosion, just as we were trying to direct those pumps as best we could into the channel, but, you know, there was a little bit of...
So that was a really, a lot bigger volume that they were pumping over, because they were draining the creek. I mean, it was going down in all the way back to the golf course. So if there wasn't any effect there, that local area is what is being affected. So it's PC Auto and Bergeron's and Bones Old Office and that type of thing.
It was really, honestly, we were just in that stage, I think, too, where it had got to, it's kind of, we didn't get a huge increase in the peak, so the pumps were able to maintain that and bring it down. But thank goodness, because if we would have had a rain or more rush, there's no way the pumps would have been able to keep up to it. So it did resolve and solve that issue for that 2 days when it could have got much worse, but it didn't. And I think the pumps that we got gave us 30 or 40 or 50 cubes a minute that they were able to additionally push over 102nd Avenue that solved that issue. So.
And it didn't affect downstream.
Don't think so.
So yes, but I'd put a caveat on that, through your worship, that really the North Creek was flowing. We didn't see significant volume through the South Dawson Creek, and so we're not sure what the implications would be if you were pumping or adding that volume and you had the South Creek pumping at the same time, what that would look like, say for instance at 8th Street.
Yeah, until we have a bridge at 8th Street, the whole idea of increasing the volume down into there.
Where's that string?
Makes you feel dicey.
Okay, we've received it for
Sounds
information
dicey.
and we'll carry it forward with the next plan. Duncan?
Did we vote?
Not yet. I was
Okay.
getting there. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I want to deal with the next one before we move on. And Kevin, if you can... I want to bring forward the reconsideration of the asphalt maintenance program that got passed at the last meeting, but I want you guys to give an explanation and update.
So I'll start. So when this motion came forward to fund the $177,000 through the operational budget, I was surprised, and I didn't have all of the information at the time. And if you recall, Kevin had actually addressed this in a previous meeting, indicating that our paving budget was that the numbers look good, and we were going to have some funding left over. And I'll let Kevin take it from there.
Yeah, so through your worship, like Duncan said, I touched, kind of brought it up in a committee of the whole when we were talking about our paving tenders for our capital works, and that the budgets, the prices that had come in and that we received were under on a lot of our projects. So things looked favorable, and we kind of chatted about the possibility that if things played out like we thought, we would have some additional funding that we may be able to move over into the maintenance side, which is the patching. And just for context, the asphalt patching tender that we put out, we put together a number of kind of scenarios within the tender of to acquire the pricing. And even though it came in at $385,000, I believe was the number, we only had $208,000 in our operational budget, and the intent would be that we would just work within the 208 and patch whatever we could within those numbers. Saying that, I mean, yes, we could spend $385,000. We could probably spend $500,000 on patching, but we had the $208,000 to work within our operational budget. And it should be noted that the operational budget was increased a couple of years ago when Sean was still here, following our pavement condition assessment report. One of the recommendations that was in there said that we should increase what we spend on maintenance. And so at that time, Sean had made an amendment to the budget for the following year, and we'd increased that, I think, from about 40,000 to up to the 208 that we currently have. So just for a little bit of background.
And so now our current paving contract under capital of what we tendered and what we have in the budget is under by?
Yeah, so with the projects that we have $300,000 to $400,000 of contingency money, that we believe we're going to have some space there. So I think we've easily got the 177 that council was speaking of. We've easily got that within those capital projects.
And so I want to speak now to the motion. I'm bringing it back for reconsideration because I'm opposed to taking more money out of our operating budget from other areas to put it into the patching program. I would rather see that money stay in within. If we have an extra $185,000 in our operating budget, I prefer to see it stay in there and not increase the patching budget. And for that purpose, I want to bring it back for reconsideration. And so now the purposes of this is, the effect is the motion, the original motion is back on the table of the 208. Right? Correct, Brenda?
The motion that's back on the table is actually for the full amount of the tender, 385, rather than the recommended of 208. That was the motion that was that was the motion that was defeated.
Sorry, no, passed at the last meeting.
Right, sorry, I wasn't.
Yeah.
So that was the motion that was passed. So that is the motion that's back on the table.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Councillor.
So if you're talking about using the money that is surplus out of the paving projects, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
So my understanding was on previous projects, when we wanted to use the surplus money, you said, well, we can't use the surplus money because the project isn't completed and we don't know what'll happen, and there was all these reasons that we couldn't use that money for other purposes. Now, if we can, I have no problem with using that money. It's for paving projects, and it would make sense, you know, when you've got people in here paving, that they would do this patching. But like I say, I was under the impression that these projects, you couldn't release that surplus until the project was completed.
So, through your worship, there's different projects have different risk, and this is a larger contingency than we normally have on a paving project. In the past, I can use, for example, we reallocated funding from the chillers over to the dressing rooms at one point because of the risk and the stage we're at the process. So we have reallocated funding in the past. The recommendation is based on risk and the number, the amount of money remaining.
Okay, so
So it's not this motion that you want to change, it's the next motion.
yeah, I want to. I have to
This one would be
reconsider this to use the operating money to make up that difference, and I'm okay if council deal with that, and then the subsequent, if administration and council say, okay, well, if we use capital money for that patching, I'm okay with that. I'm just not in favor of operating.
Yeah.
So just for clarification, if you want to use capital money, you would defeat the motion that's in front of you now.
Right. And that's the one that's carrying the operating money, because then we couldn't do the other. So I'm putting that forward as a motion for reconsideration. Councillor Parslow, sorry?
Yeah, in talking to people in the private sector about these things, they say, you know, if you allow your roads to disintegrate, you're making a bigger problem. So I think the full amount of work needs to be done, not some of it. I'm of the view our operating budget, in speaking to why I voted the way I did, I'm against deferring capital projects because they'll just come back and you just fall behind as well. So the advice I've had is that we need to do as much as we can. And so that's why I think the full amount of the stroke that you had presented needs to be. How it's funded, given you've got with the options you provided, is not material to me at this juncture. It was, but it isn't now.
Okay, Councillor Rogers?
Yeah, I really do believe in the maintenance and the repair of our roads, because if you let a road go too far, as we've already learned through budget, it's $1 million to pave 3 blocks. We learned that from 15th Street, where in front of the high school, where the whole road just fell apart. And then we had to replace that whole road. And then, as it was explained to me, when you put road maintenance on a graph, and if you don't do the maintenance, your costs are gonna skyrocket. So I think that if we're not gonna repaving roads or paving the 17 kilometers of gravel roads that we have in Dawson Creek, I think if anything, we should really concentrate on accelerating the repairs and maintenance program as it was indicated in the recommendations for our road report. Because we aren't even following the recommendations that were in that same road report. You know, we followed the recommendation to increase the maintenance, but we didn't follow the recommendation to spend over $3 million a year on the existing roads. So I'm in favor of the, if it's $385,000 that staff has indicated that we need to spend on maintenance on a road. I think that we try and find the money wherever we can to do that. And I like, if they want the 385, I say we go with that. But where the money comes from is what we're discussing. So if they got the money somewhere, I don't care where it comes from, just as long as it goes.
See, and I do. I don't think if operating at the end of the year rolls into surplus and helps us with our ultimate operational costs and budget. And so if administration say it's 208 is what we got budgeted for, I'm not in favor of squeezing another 180 out of the operating budget to do that. That's my view. But I'm okay doing it if they say we've got some excess in capital in that budget that we can do to fund it. I'm good with that. And that's the purpose. That's why I brought it up.
I'm hearing that staff says that we could get the money from the existing paving program.
Correct. Yeah. So, Councillor DeBecca?
There was another pressure there too that we talked about last meeting, was the 300,000 for the fall fair, which we were kicking around different places. But if there's surplus money in some of the contracts, then possibly that could come from there as well.
So I think I'm hearing the same thing from everybody, that 385 is appropriate. We're in favor of that. If they can find the money through capital, okay. I think there's general consensus is what I've heard, so, but I need to deal with the motion on the reconsideration. Brenda?
So just a suggestion on process. This motion is on the table. It could be amended instead of the additional funds coming from the operational budget to have the additional fund come
from the capital?
So
on the excess
that's
capital of the
amending
paving.
motion, then you could carry on.
So moved.
Councillor Parslow, seconded. Councillor Schumann, discussion. So we 385 for the patching program, and the additional 200 from the 208. The additional will come from the excess of the capital paving program in the budget.
Well, what if staff did find some savings possibly in operations? Now you're restricting them from taking any operation.
So we should have that discussion as through our budget for 4 months, and so we should have that conversation then as a separate topic and say, okay, what are we doing within the operating budget? We've just approved that. Duncan?
So through your worship, also when council approved using the flood mitigation funding for the Exhibition Association, part of that motion was also any capital surplus throughout the year would go back to replenish the 500. So right now, we've restricted the paving program in that funding is going to make up this 200. Any other surplus is going to start replenishing the flood mitigation. So we're a ways away from having excess money.
Yeah.
To put it short. It's short.
On the amendments, are you ready for the vote? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And so, Duncan, you don't need to do a verbal update?
No, I don't.
So we've got to go back to 11:30 because we have...
Worship?
Sorry?
We need to have a vote on the motion.
Voted is it on the amended motion?
Oh, okay. Sorry. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And so, Brent, do you guys want a 5-minute break for washroom? And then we'll get Brent for the 11:30 delegation?
Yes, please.
Oh, yes, please. Oh, Janet.
Item 2.9 under our delegations, and we have presentation this morning on our events tourism strategy. And we have Laura Plant, tourism consulting here this morning, and with Ryan. And unfortunately, Ryan isn't here, so Laura's going to carry the ball. And the floor is yours. I'm going to close this blind just so that we... And the floor is yours, Laura. Thank you for coming this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So, good morning to everyone. I thought I'd start with a brief introduction because last time I was here I got to meet a number of you, but not everybody. So, hello and good morning. I wanted to just talk a little bit about my background and why I got to work with Ryan McIver on this project, just to give you a little bit of context. For 10 years I worked with Tourism Destination BC, used to be called Tourism BC, and I was the manager of community partnerships, and I worked with 95 different communities in the province on strategic planning. So got to experience a lot of communities, large and small, who were very interested in tourism. Part of my role also involved being the sport tourism manager. So I worked with an organization called 2010 Legacies Now in the lead up to the Olympic Games, and we worked on things like sport tourism strategy and sport tourism workshops, which we brought to Dawson Creek. And we worked with the BC Sport Tourism Network, which involved bringing communities together sort of as a united front when we went off to Ottawa to the Canadian Sport Tourism Alliance Congress to talk about bringing events to British Columbia. So I have a real strong interest in this area, and in 2016 I worked with Tourism Prince George on their 10-year sport tourism strategy. And I'm currently working with Langford on their 5-year strategy, which of course event tourism is very big there as well. Real big, strong focus on sport. So it's an area that I've had a lot of experience in and really enjoy. And when Ryan asked if I was available to come and work with Tourism Dawson Creek, I was quite excited because I've been here before, worked with your community in tourism planning in the past with my previous role. And I felt like I wanted to work on a strategy that wasn't going to collect dust. I'm not interested in writing strategies for the sake of writing them. I want to work with communities that really want to move that needle, and I really felt like that momentum was happening here. So I gladly jumped on that project with Ryan and said, let's try to build a strategy. I also wanted to point out that I do wear another hat. I have a part-time contract with the Tourism Industry Association of BC. We're the tourism advocacy organization, and we work with our members, of which Dawson Creek is one, to help our provincial government understand all the challenges and good things that are happening in our tourism industry. And it is Tourism Week, so I just wanted to welcome everyone to Tourism Week. It's a very opportunity to be talking about this. So one of our focuses is BC Tourism Matters, so I'll be taking some photos today while I'm here and sharing those on social media as we celebrate tourism in your community. So today we don't have a lot of time for quite a large strategy, but we'll try to cover as much as we can and then have some time for questions. I wanted to do an overview of our strategy creation process. How did we get from where we were talking early in the year to the creation of our draft strategy now? I want to talk a little bit about what event tourism is exactly so that we're all on the same page. We did an analysis of other competitive communities in and around the area, as well as Vancouver. I wanted to just talk briefly about that analysis, what we could learn from them. Talk about the stakeholder input, who we talked to in the community and what those common themes were. Talk a little bit about your current situation, and then really get into the recommendations and what is it that this plan suggests that we actually implement. So before we get into the details, Tourism Dawson Creek really wanted to clarify the focus of effort. So there's really sort of two main components when it comes to marketing this community as a destination. We have marketing and product development, so we're going to be promoting the community as a place to visit. Obviously, to leisure travelers, we don't want to forget about the Alaska Highway explorers, the short haul visitors that want to visit this region, your what we call the VFR market, visiting friends and relatives. Those are really important people that come to your community. And then, of course, sector specific things that might be birding or what have you. We'll continue to do those things from a marketing, your community perspective. But we also want to add event tourism as a specific marketing initiative. And so this would all be included in the Tourism Dawson Creek existing budget. So reallocating some funds in order to have these two distinct areas, as well as visitor services, of course. So looking at the visitor center and such. Yes?
Thanks, Laura. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to catch a point here. I just finished recently reading a report that was put out through Northern Development, and it was and you being part of the Tourist Association, 70% of the tourists that come to the north are from the north, from northern British Columbia. So when you were just talking about marketing dollars and stuff like that, so if you're getting 30% of your visitors coming from Europe and from the United States and from other parts of Canada, so when you're talking your budget, would you be spending, like, because it seems to me like we spend like 70% of our budget going after 30% of the people that are going to be visiting here, versus it should, I would think it would be the other way around. You want to target the people that are already coming here.
Well, there's a couple of different things the way provincial marketing works in the province. So Destination British Columbia is focused primarily on the further afield markets, and then working with the tourism regions. Of course, you fall into the northern BC region. And so really taking those marketing dollars that you have and really leveraging them with your northern BC partner and your Destination BC partner. I wouldn't suggest that Tourism Dawson Creek is on its own going out to overseas markets for marketing, because there would be sort of duplicating the efforts that are already happening provincially. But there could be ways and projects where you want to leverage those dollars with them in partnership. But
And just in working with Brian throughout this process, if you're talking about the real budget implications and the change, they're really taking the money that they used to spend on product development around the Alaska Highway, around the short haul, around kind of that first part of the table, and saying, we've got the product now, we're going to continue with the marketing, we're going to leverage these other opportunities, but instead of investing in the product development, now we're going to invest in product development around event tourism. And those are the conversations I've had with Ryan, and I think that's accurate.
I got it. Okay, so just to take sort of 1 minute and make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of event tourism. So we know that tourism marketing is really about promoting your destination as a place to come and visit. And then event hosting obviously is putting on a really great event. And those are two really distinct skill sets. Whoever's putting on the event is really going to be focused on, you know, the right facilities or the right ice or whatever it might be. But when those two things overlap, we get what we call event tourism. And that's really when you are promoting an event as a visitor attraction. So people are going to come because that event is being held. They may be coming to participate in it or watch their child or friend perform in it, or they may just be coming to enjoy whatever the festival is or what have you. What it's not referring to is events that are created for your residents. But we're really focused on events that are bringing in overnight visitors. We're not necessarily talking about a Canada Day celebration or a parade. Those are important events in your community, but they're not what we're talking about as part of this event strategy. So we're really looking at events that we can draw in visitors, whether they're from the community next door or an international tournament that's bringing in people from around the globe. So for this strategy, we looked at a bunch of different things. Obviously, we looked at my past experience, which I've talked about, consulted with Tourism Dawson Creek and, of course, the staff at the Visitor Center as well. Visited the community earlier in the year. It was much colder last time I was here.
Yeah.
We talked to a whole bunch of stakeholders. We had 27 different stakeholder consultations, so obviously some of the council here and the mayor, city staff, the chamber. We looked at the funding program through the Pomeroy Hotel Group, so I met with them in Grand Prairie, talked to some accommodations and food and beverage partners, looked at events such as your summer cruise and your exhibition, and then looked at 11 different sports. So it's not every single sport in the community, but really wanted to talk to different event hosts from large and small events. Some groups have a lot of experience, some are sort of just thinking about hosting events. So we really wanted to get involved, all of that feedback, and put that into the strategy. Then we looked at a situation analysis. So we really looked at a competitive analysis, looking at some other communities. We looked at your strengths and weaknesses. It's always important to do that, what's working, what's not. We looked at your existing planning. So event tourism and sport tourism is not a new concept. This is something that's been talked about for a long time, so we'll talk about that a bit later. And then also incorporated that stakeholder input into all of this. So looking at the competitive analysis, we looked at a few different locations. Obviously, Vancouver is very different from Dawson Creek and perhaps not a competitor, but there were some really great things we could learn from their sport hosting program. Looked at Kamloops, the self-proclaimed tournament capital of Canada, Prince George, Regina and Lethbridge, and Fort McMurray, and we looked at Grand Prairie. And when looking at those, we really wanted to see, is there anything we could learn from those destinations and transfer into our strategy? So some of the things that we found was that they recommended that we design some type of one-stop shop to assist organizers. Rather than having event organizers, who often are volunteer-oriented, having to go to different groups for different information, and or perhaps not even going to anyone and just putting on an event unbeknownst to the community. It's best to have a one-stop where they can go and get information. It's really important to combine the efforts of your destination marketing organization, so your Tourism Dawson Creek, combine those efforts with event organizers. You've got one organization promoting the community. If they don't know an event is happening, then they can't do any kind of marketing leverage there and really enhance that event. It's important to have an approved, funded strategy, so something that people can refer to and say, that's the direction that we're headed and why, and to have some dedicated staff. It really has to be somebody's job. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. They really felt it was important to incorporate branding into your event hosting. So don't sort of throw out the branding that you've already got in place. I mean, there are communities in this province spending a lot of money on branding exercises, trying to figure out what is it that makes us unique, and you've already got that. You've got the mile zero. Nobody can take that away from you. So incorporate that somehow into your event hosting, whether it's the name of events or the type of events that you go after. Maintain a close working relationship with the city. Provide some kind of hosting grant program, but not just give out dollars, but really have a requirement to provide post-event metrics. It's really important that if we're giving out dollars, that we get information back from those events. How many people came? How many hotel rooms? How long was the event? Has it grown? Various different things that they can measure. So it really comes with some strings so that we can really measure the ROI. Seek provincial hosting grants. Don't just rely on the dollars in this community, whether ways to leverage it with other groups. Develop toolkits, share best practices with event hosts. In our consultation, we learned different things from different event hosts. We thought, well, maybe that event should learn from, event B about how they do that. There's some real learning that can happen there. And assist with volunteer recruitment and acknowledgement. Events are not only supported by volunteers to make them happen, but many events are coordinated by volunteers. And I think taking a little bit of time in these communities to acknowledge that really paid off a lot of dividends. And then these communities eventually are able to generate legacy funds from successful events, which can then feed back into the strategy. So that takes some time to do that, but it certainly can be a goal that we look
Well, that
forward
would be
to.
Kamloops, because Kamloops has the legacy games, and that was monies that was left
Yes.
over from summer games, I think it was,
Yeah.
or something like that.
So, and they host a huge number of events, and I thought what was really interesting about Kamloops is you sort of think, oh, they've got it all figured out. But when talking to them and to Tourism Kamloops, they realized even though they had a successful DMO and a successful tournament capital group, they weren't necessarily talking to each other, and they were missing some of those opportunities. So they've created a sort of a new committee, I forget what it's called, Host Kamloops, where they actually talk and say, well, here's our calendar of things we're doing this year, and here's our marketing activities, and where can they overlap? So even groups that seem to be doing it really well can still benefit from more collaboration. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to learn from them. So this chart, which is in the strategy, outlines those communities, and you can see obviously the population. Dawson Creek is one of the smaller communities. What I thought was so interesting is that your number of hotel rooms is very high for the number of people in your community. Now I appreciate that that's probably in large part due to the oil and gas industry, but you've got a real opportunity there. They may be busy a lot of times. We did hear that from our feedback from the stakeholders, that hotel room prices can be high and they sometimes are not available, but there's still an opportunity here. Some communities don't have rooms to host events, so sort of dead in the water. What I thought was also interesting is that unlike most communities here, there isn't really that sport event committee or person or office or someone whose job it is to really look after sport and events. So that's obviously an opportunity for us. And most of the communities have some kind of formalized grant program where there's some eligibility requirements and they can get either some funding or some support in some manner. And then that information is fed back and it's calculated what the impact is. So there has been funding for events in your community, but I think there's an opportunity to sort of tighten that up into more of an event hosting grant.
And might I add that those hotels in those other communities are also paying towards tourism through the MRDT tax, and Dawson Creek is not.
Yes, the ones in British Columbia, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Kamloops and Prince George and Vancouver, yes. So meetings and conferences, we really looked at, we do have this strong hotel room count in the community and strong meeting facility inventories. Many of the hotels and the facilities around the community could host actual meetings or conferences. So we really want to recommend targeting meetings and small conferences in addition to sport events. And that's why this is an event tourism strategy, not just a sport event. There's opportunities to bring meetings here. So the first step is really to determine what size event that your community can host in terms of available hotel rooms or ballroom sizes or whatever it might be. So the plan is really to go after conferences based on a size. So depending on the audience, you might be able to further entice them with things related to the Alaska Highway. If there's an American conference that might be appealing to them, or a historical themed conference, that could be a real draw for them. You might also want to attract things like natural resource conferences or local government conferences that sort of relate to your community. You can also look at things like sport federation annual general meetings or coaching clinics. They don't just have to be actual competitions in the sport area. So coming up with that sort of target list of who can we go after, and then being really proactive to go out and get those meetings and conferences could be a part of the strategy. And in the strategy, we've outlined some other communities that are really strong in this area. So Kelowna, Nelson, Fort McMurray, and Squamish. So there's some real concrete sort of things you can go out and steal and see how their websites are putting all that information together. It's really important when looking at meetings and conferences, like you can imagine putting on a wedding, you want to have all the information in one spot. I want to host a meeting. Here's all the information I need to know about that community. Yes, they can host me. Here's who I call. And those conversations can take off from there. So when looking at the strengths and weaknesses, there's obviously a much longer list in the strategy. But basically, when we look at the strengths, as I mentioned, we already have the Mile Zero brand. We don't have to go out and spend $25,000 on a branding strategy and try to come up with something. It's already there. You've got a proven track record of hosting events. You've got great facilities. Obviously, every community could come up with more facilities they'd like to have, but you already have a bunch in place. You have willing hosts, and you have a regional airport. These are all great strengths. Weaknesses, some people could see it as a remote location. There could be argued there's a somewhat uncoordinated approach. I've heard stories of people going after events and not going to talk to the hotel groups about whether there's rooms available, or potentially hosting an event on the same weekend as something else. So there's opportunities there, and possibly missed opportunities. If a marketing organization doesn't know an event is coming, it's very difficult to coordinate that marketing. And then I heard repeatedly about hotel rates and availability. Not really sure how to solve that, but perhaps with more coordination and insight into what's coming and what kind of events we could be going after, those conversations could improve. And then opportunities. There's real opportunity to enhance existing events. This is not just about going and getting new events, which is important. Everybody I talked to said there's room for more events, but really enhancing the ones we have. How do we get more people to attend them? How do we get them to stay longer? How do we get them to bring more people with them? Active event recruitment. So not just sort of waiting for events to come to us, but actually going out and seeking those out. Creating tools and resources for the event hosts. Many are volunteer, and they're doing a fantastic job. There's always opportunities to create new learning and to assist in different ways. It isn't always about giving them money, but about giving them tools and resources. Coming up with some kind of investment metrics. We're not really getting information back from the events about the impact, the numbers of people and how they're growing and how many rooms and all of that. And having some kind of event grant program that we've talked about. So these are some of the opportunities. As part of the situation analysis, we also went back and looked at existing planning. So in 2005, there was a sport tourism workshop, which I referenced at the beginning. In 2006, there was a Community Tourism Foundation's plan, again, which I was part of. And that's really putting together that tourism strategy. The great thing is, in 2009, that was updated. So a lot of communities will write a plan and never go back and look at it. But here, the plan was reviewed and continually updated. Again, in 2015-16, that was updated again. A common theme throughout all of these strategies is the importance of having some kind of sport or event strategy with a coordinator or manager or somebody to implement it. So this idea is not new, but for a whole host of reasons, it hasn't happened. But I feel like, again, we're at this point of this being brought up as an idea, and there's a real opportunity now with your new tourism contract in place and with people in seats who have experience in this area, that the time is ripe now to implement that. So I wanted to look at the stakeholder input when I talked to the 27 different groups in your community. This is sort of a summary of some of those themes. I heard from lots of people that they really felt it was important that we diversify the local economy. It's not about replacing other economies with event tourism, but adding it to the mix. and everybody said there was room for more events. Many felt that it was really important as a quality of life issue. Lots of people who compete in events, it's important if you can host them here, you don't always have to travel. Events give people things to do and opportunities to maybe see sports or types of events they wouldn't see otherwise. Events really need support. They need to know where to go. Where is this one-stop shop that I can go, and how, is there one calendar that I can inform about my event instead of 10 different ones and then I miss an important one? How do I work better with the hotels, that kind of thing. They felt that there's a real proven track record, that this is something they've been doing already. They don't need to sort of reprove how well their event is going. They want to enhance it and move forward. They felt it was important to use the facilities that you have already invested in. Could there be opportunity for new facilities? For sure, but until we've really invested in and filled out the ones that we have, that should be the priority. They felt it was important to coordinate the event calendars. And that's something that we'll have in our strategy here, is that it's important to understand what events are happening and when, what time of year. Do they work with the hotels? Are they getting in the way of another event? And events who are hosting want one place to put it. It's really important to create a sport event matrix. So really figuring out what sports do we have, what events can they host, what capacity do they have, and putting that kind of on a grid and figuring out, okay, here's the types of events we should go after at what time of year and with which groups, and making that really clear, and then supporting those events. Expand and evolving your existing events. Is there, for example, at Summer Cruise, is there an opportunity for some kind of music component or something to add to the event? And work with the event hosts that are doing that. It's not to put more on their plate, but to assist them in ways to perhaps expand it and improve it, bring in other players, whatever it might be. You recognize the event hosts and volunteers. I heard repeatedly from event hosts that, and the volunteers that they support, I think there's a real opportunity to acknowledge them, and it might be something that you do during National Volunteer Week, but really recognizing that these volunteers bring a huge economic impact to your community. And incorporating visitor servicing before and during the event. So if we're hosting an event, whether it's the summer cruise or hockey tournament, we know those individuals are coming, and they're coming on this particular day, and there's a real opportunity to connect with them before they get here. Unlike a sightseer who's in an RV coming on the Alaska Highway, we may not know when they're coming, but these individuals with an event tourism event, we know when they're coming. We can reach out to them ahead of time, make sure that they know what Dawson Creek has to offer, encourage them to bring extra people. And then when they're here, we can be on site at events, making sure they understand where to go eat and how to move around the community and really improve that. Thank you. Really improve that impact of that event. So, in summary, we've really looked at what other communities are doing, how you're doing things well and where things could be improved. The community consultation, what stakeholders told us. And what it basically summarizes up to is that you have local events already in place, you have a strong hosting history, you have a variety of facilities and accommodation, and you have economic impact assessments which are complete and do show the large economic impact that events are having here. Some communities don't have those EIAs, as we call them, in place. I was surprised at how many you have completed. But what you didn't have until recently was an event tourism strategy, which we now have, and a coordinator, manager, whatever you want to call it, someone who's actually going to be responsible for implementing this. So, if we do decide that, okay, event tourism is the focus that we want to take, what could it look like here in Dawson Creek? So I created this table to sort of outline what the event tourism roles could look like. So there's really sort of 4 essential groups. First, you've got your sport clubs. They're the groups, so whether it's the basketball group or hockey, whoever it might be, that are going to bid on events, and they're going to host the event. We learned recently about an interest for it's a disc golf tournament. So there's a sport club that says, I want to host this event. They might work with the provincial sport organizations or the national sport organizations or the event right holder and say, we're going to host this event here. They are going to be on the organizing committee, and they're going to really be promoting the event. Then you're going to have clubs and associations, not so much sport groups, but Summer Cruise as an example. They're also going to be the event right holder. They're going to be organizing it, promoting it. And then you would have what I'm calling at this point, can be called whatever you like, but an event tourism office. They're the group that really supports those event bids. So they're not hosting the event themselves, they're supporting the people that are hosting it. They may sit on a bid committee. They may help the organizing committee. They may assist in putting together a bid package, getting letters of support from council, whatever it might be. And they're cooperatively marketing those events. So they're not just relying on the club or the hockey team or whatever to market the event, but working with Tourism Dawson Creek on that. And then Dawson Creek overall is marketing the community as an event host. And then you'll have local businesses as well. They would also support the event, whether that's donations or prizes or sponsoring events or giving special hotel rates, whatever it might be. So you've got these 4 groups who would be involved in event tourism. So how would we then implement this? So we have our plan, we need some goals, and we need some actual action steps. We'll get into the details here, what this would actually look like if we were to roll it out. So there's really 3 essential goals. We have to create the strategy, we have to do some marketing, and then what I call product development or an event enhancement. So the first thing would be to create this event tourism strategy. We really need to clarify the roles and responsibilities for marketing and bidding and hosting and measuring the economic impact. If we're not measuring the impact, then I'm not sure why we're doing this. It should be resulting in something positive. We need to provide guidance on event bidding based on identified gaps and availability in your event hosting calendar. Let's be strategic about what we're going after and when, and make sure that it fits with the facilities and the availability of rooms and all of those things. And we need to have measurable objectives. What is it that we're trying to do, and can we measure it? So we need to assist stakeholders to better understand the value of event tourism, develop and steward this event calendar, make sure that we're bidding and hosting the right things at the right time, and measure the annual event hosting revenues, your room nights, your economic spend, whatever it is that you can measure with your partners. Second goal is around marketing. So really want to decrease those dark days at your hosting facilities. Let's fill those up. We want to increase visitation and lengthen visitor stay. Obviously, we want to encourage greater visitor spending in all your local businesses. So there may be businesses that say, well, I'm not involved in event hosting, but they can be involved in receiving visitors when they're here. And the measurable objectives out of this would really be to enhance your existing event hosting, increase the number of events hosted. Everyone said there was more space for that. Increase the length of stay. Let's not have them come just for the actual tournament or what have you, have them stay before or after. Improve the shoulder season. I think your shoulder season here is somewhat different depending on who you're talking to. Obviously, there's a high season for RVers. There's a different high season for the hotels. So there could even be multiple shoulder seasons in your community. And really creating growth in the overall value of the visitor economy. And third is around product development. So we really want to ensure that those local groups are supported during the process of whether they're just exploring a bid or actually bidding on it, hosting. We want to make sure that those efforts are fruitful and that they actually get the things that they're going after. We want to coordinate all the tourism event stakeholders, ensure a transfer of knowledge post-event. It was very interesting in my conversations with the different event hosts when I would hear them talking about something and I think another group could really benefit from that information, or this group has figured out insurance and sort of figured out the hard way things. They could share that with other groups. So how do we make sure that transfer of knowledge is there? And really develop and enhance events. Event organizers are very busy putting on the logistics of their event. They may not have the time to sit back and say, what else could we do to enhance this? What else, what other players could we bring to the table? And that's what the event tourism office could do. So how would we measure that? Perhaps there's an event hosting grant program that could assist in hosting more events. You could have guidelines. I think it's important with these event hosting grants to have a guideline. There has to be, perhaps it's the number of people that the event would bring, or is it a certain time of year that the event would come to your community? What are those requirements? And then, of course, having the event be responsible for feeding information back after the event. And then hosting something like an annual event host meeting, getting those event hosts in the room together to share that knowledge, to learn what's working, what's not, how can they work together, what are they thinking about for the future? Is a big event planning on moving the dates of their event and nobody else knows this, whatever it might be. So really bringing those partners together. So from these 3 big goals, we have 6 strategies. The first would be to create an event tourism office, as I'm calling it. Doing event recruitment and marketing, going after those events, having an event hosting grant program, having an event hosting calendar, and really making sure you have the capacity to deliver on that calendar. Event enhancement, and then volunteer appreciation and recruitment. So we'll just quickly walk through these. So in year one, the event tourism office we'd finalize that job description. The strategy has a draft job description in here to get everybody started. Really hire that position and finalize the strategy in year one tactical plan based on any additional feedback that comes in from stakeholders. Around event recruitment, in year one, we really go and explore various marketing opportunities. We've got Northern BC and Destination BC that have cooperative community programs where they can match dollars. There could be something we could do with them. The NDIT, the Northern Development Initiative Trust, could have some programs that fit. The Rural Discovery Destination Marketing Fund, I don't believe very many stakeholders here are taking advantage of that through the Pomeroy Hotel Group. Hosting BC is a group that provides funding to events. That could be something that the Tourism Event Office assists events with getting some of those funds. And then really having event registrant materials for event hosts. Let's talk to those people before they get here when we know they're coming for an event. And that's really the areas of expertise from Tourism Dawson Creek could really help with that. And then around recruitment, really looking at a facility inventory. We need to know what facilities we have, what events we can host there, what meetings, and having all of those sort of specifications outlined in detail. I heard from several people, we don't know what we don't know. So we need to be more clear on exactly what we have and when we could host and how big it is and all the rest of that. And then develop some kind of event and sports and wedding and meeting planner information. So when you go on the Tourism Dawson Creek website, if you're an event planner, a wedding planner, whatever, everything's there and you're like, okay, I can see exactly what they can host. There's no confusion about it. I know who to call. I want to host my event there, and they make the call. The event hosting grant program, the idea is that Tourism Dawson Creek could really work in partnership with the City of Dawson Creek to design an event hosting grant program. So I think it's important that we develop eligibility requirements for this. So as I said before, maybe it's the number of people that you're bringing to the event, or it's an event at a certain time of year. What I heard from many of the event organizers wasn't so much that they needed the dollars for established events, but they wanted to understand why some events get it and some don't, and whether they would get it for more than 1 year and be able to plan for that. So I think there needs to be really clear eligibility requirements for the grant, and like I said before, there has to be some kind of post-event metrics. Some event hosting programs will give a certain percent, say 50% up front, and then the other 50% post-event once the information is fed back to the DMO. There could also be an opportunity to look at giving a discount on facility rentals. Maybe there's a certain percentage that's available if your event is of a certain size or at a certain time of year. So there's different requirements and eligibility that could be put in place there. Year two would really be promoting that program to all event hosts. The city would continue to administer that program, and Tourism Dawson Creek would really be responsible for reporting on the hosting outcomes. So that's a program that could be worked out in more detail going forward. Event hosting calendar, so the first year would really be about developing that calendar, figure out who's hosting what, who's thinking about hosting what. Meet with all of the event hosts to determine their resources. Just because an event is available doesn't mean your community has the resources to pull it off, or maybe it does. Accommodators need to be brought into that conversation to understand when do they have availability, when do they have low room night bookings and they want to fill that up. When do they not have availability? When can they not come to the table? And really determine those partnerships. Year two would really be populating that calendar and again developing that host facility matrix, so that chart where we're able to say here's what we can host, here's when, here's the types of events we're going after, and you have that sort of 3, 5, 10-year plan about what events you're going to host. Can you host international events every year? Perhaps. Maybe you need to do it every other year, whatever the resources show that you're available to do. Event enhancement. I think it's really important to develop an event hosting toolkit. So maybe you have tips on how to do better bids. Maybe there's resources or a photo library. Let's get really great images of your community and your facilities available to these event hosts. Maps, whether it's more of those economic impact assessments. Arrival packages. How do we put together a great package so that when someone registers for an event in your community, they get this great package, whether it's email or what have you, that says you're coming to Dawson Creek, here's all the great things and all the reasons you should bring everyone you know with you. Hosting checklists. Maybe there's the top 10 things when a new, when we hear about this disc golf tournament that's interested, they could come in, have you addressed all of these top 10 things? And if they have, great, we're on our way. If there's things they need assistance with, then the event office can help them work through that. Maybe they're ready now, maybe they need more assistance to get ready for next year, whatever it might be. And then, as I mentioned, volunteer appreciation and recruitment. This could be as simple as hosting something during National Volunteer Week, which was in April of each year. There's an opportunity to really recognize the event hosts and all the people who volunteer for events. It could be an opportunity to really promote your residents getting more involved in events and helping them understand all the opportunities that are available to volunteer. So once we've got all those strategies in place and we're really implementing them, it's really important to monitor that success and measure the impact. There's no point doing this if we're not really measuring it and seeing if it's working. So like past planning that has come back around and reviewed it every few years, this plan would be on that sort of annual rotation. So I wanted to list some of the things that you could measure, or all of the things. You could measure the number of events or meetings or conferences that are hosted. Ideally, you'd see that number increasing over time. The number of event attendees. I don't know if anyone even knows at this point how many people we do have coming to the community. Could be hotel occupancy rates or number of rooms booked for events. Of course, we'd have to have support from our hotel partners on that. A number of visitor interactions by the mobile visitor service teams. We'll get them out at events, figure out how many people that they're interacting with. The number is likely going to be potentially higher than people that are coming through the visitor center. Social media engagement pertaining to an event, pre or post. As I called it, explore Dawson Creek pre-event packages that are sent to registrants. How many of those go out? Grants received by your local groups. If we're able to assist them in getting a Hosting BC grant from the provincial government, we can calculate how many of those that we're successful with. Corporate sponsorship, successful municipal grant applications, or cooperative dollars leveraged. I think there's a real opportunity to take the marketing dollars that Tourism Dawson Creek has and leverage it with our partners and show that we're able to take that $1 and turn it into $3. Online web metrics related to event planning pages. So if you've got some great resources there for wedding and meeting conference organizers, and we see that those pages are really being well used, that would be a great way to measure. The requests for planning materials from those people. The number of meetings that we have with provincial sport organizations or national sport organizations. It's really important that when we're doing this proactive approach, that Tourism Dawson Creek is at the national conference, the Sport Tourism Alliance conference in Ottawa every year, where all the national sport organizations meet and they have one-on-one meetings with communities from across the country. It's important that Dawson Creek is there and talking about what they have and building those relationships so we can count the number of meetings. Event facility rental requests, number of volunteers. So there's lots of different ways that we can measure the impact and see that growth every year, hopefully every year. So as I mentioned, in terms of budget, the existing Tourism Dawson Creek budget is going to be reallocated to cover this event tourism strategy component. So creating that event tourism office, or whatever it would end up being called, is within that existing strategy. So this is not a new piece, as we mentioned earlier. So in terms of timeline, right now this is a draft strategy proposed that you get finalized. Having said that, to me, strategies are always somewhat written in pencil. As you learn new information and you get new partnerships, things can evolve over time, but ideally we sort of finalize this for now. Recruit for the Event Tourism Office in the fall of 2018 with the intention of really launching it in 2019 with the staff, and really start those sort of door knocking on all of the event hosts as we get ready to launch a whole bunch of, hopefully, new events in 2019 and 2020. So that's 73 pages summarized as quickly as possible. I didn't want to get into too much detail in any particular area in case you had specific questions that we can delve into more detail.
80 pages, I think.
80, sorry.
I think I was counting 80 pages.
You're probably right. Oh, 81.
Oh, there we go. Even
Including
worse.
the cover.
Thank you, Laura. So Councillor Parslow, then Councillor Schumann.
Yeah, if I can turn to page 17 of your report.
Yep.
So here, I just wondered if you could, whilst you're here, help me understand So starting in the middle of the page there, Kamloops offers a tournament capital grant that provides funds for amateur sports organizations, individuals hosting events. So could you just speak to those 4 categories under that? What, you know, if I, how does it work for each of those categories?
So, yeah, so they're based on the size of the of the tournament. So if it's a provincial tournament, meaning the participants are from British Columbia, they get a smaller amount of money than if it's an invitational where there's participants from further afield.
So if I just use an example, if a participant from Dawson Creek is taking part in that provincial tournament, they will get $500 assistance to help them get to that event? Is that how it works?
No, this is funding for the event host.
I
So
see.
if the event
Okay.
host is, so if the local soccer club here is hosting a provincial tournament and
Yes.
drawing participants from British Columbia, they would
Yeah.
get a smaller amount of money than if they were hosting a world tournament.
Thank you.
There
Thank
was
you.
some examples in, I think it was Prince George, that has something like what you had just first said, Charlie, where they have a grant
To
fund.
bring people in?
Well, they have that. They have all sorts of things, actually. I was really intrigued by all the different examples of the grant funding at the different communities. But Prince George has one where they have funding for people who are going to host and bring tournaments to or events to. But then they also had one that was, so for all the sports teams that are coming in asking for travel assistance, etc., they also have an example in Prince George of that. So Prince George has got quite a series of them.
So, thank you. It'd be interesting to see that. Is that in the report? No, it's not. Oh,
Yeah, it is.
okay,
Yeah.
this doesn't matter. So just continuing on that vein, this is just for my understanding. So who administers that grant?
There, as I mentioned in Kamloops, there's 2 different groups. There's Tourism Kamloops, which you probably have heard about, and they are funded primarily through the hotel tax. So they're responsible for marketing Kamloops as a destination. And then there's the Kamloops, I think they're called the Tournament Capital Group or
Yes, sure.
something.
Yeah.
And they're funded through the city of Kamloops. So, as I mentioned, those 2 groups have somewhat different mandates, but now are working much more closely together.
Right.
But one is created to bring events. They've heavily invested in facilities in that community with support of the local stakeholders. They've had to, do referendums and vote and et cetera, and spent a lot of money
Yeah.
building facilities. The intention then was to have a funded group that would draw on bids and various things to fill those facilities.
So that group administers a grant that is
Yes.
given to them from the city?
Yes, so they work with their
Okay.
event hosts to say, you bring an event here. They're not hosting the event, they're
No.
working with the event host to say,
Right.
go out.
So the question then is, in your recommendation here, you say the city administers the grant. Why did you break away from the Kamloops model? So the city of Dawson Creek is administering a grant that has as its focus event tourism. I just don't understand that.
Well, there's currently funding going to event hosts in your community, depending on who's asking each year. Some get approved, some don't. So that has already been in place. So I think it makes sense. This is also funded through the city in Kamloops. So I think
I understand the funding source, the city,
Yeah.
but the actual, see, we have another example here. We have a cultural fund of 15,000, let's say, and it's administered
Oh, our
by
arts- our
by the
arts
Art Council,
yeah.
right? So I'm just trying to press here why, because I think the city should get out of that. I mean, give a grant. And the Arts Council, in my opinion, does a great job. They're very sensitive to the arts groups. I would be advocating that we replicate our good experience with the Arts Council to the event
So the
group.
event, so for example, the
Yeah.
event hosting grant amount is
Well,
given
probably,
to
yeah, given to the,
the event office to
Yeah.
administer.
So the,
so that's just a,
yeah, the
There
concern
was
I
a
have.
suggest that there
Yeah,
was
the concern I have is there's other events in our community
not just
that aren't bringing people to our community, such as a Rotary auction that the city provides $750 to annually that wouldn't qualify under this program. So you're either setting up two streams of funding, or you're saying we're no longer funding any of those events.
yeah, exactly.
Go ahead.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
and so that's when I looked at all those links that you provided with what all the other communities are doing. They have like Fort McMurray and Prince George. I mean, I didn't get to look at all of them because it was very problematic with our program here to go back and forth and trying to look at it. But they, like Prince George has different, like they have a grant funding for community events. They have, or maybe I'm mixing up, maybe it was Fort McMurray, but they have there was a whole page and it was, you know, grants for travel assistance. There was grants for hosting tournaments or events in your community. There was grants for community events. There was grants, like there was a whole, I mean, when we get into creating our own grants policy, one that maybe works better than our last one did, there's so many great examples out there, and I was super happy that you put them all in there, even though it was difficult to look at them. It was.
I agree. I was somewhat surprised in some communities how it seemed, from an outsider perspective, rather complicated. But at the same time, it was very clear. If your event fits in this box, you can apply for this amount of money at this time, and if your event is bringing in visitors. So they've obviously put in that effort there to figure that out, but there's certainly communities that you can learn from on that.
I really appreciated this strategy. I think that it's what, I mean, when I was thinking about a strategy around events, tourism, this certainly nailed it for me. And I love that it was called Punching Above Our Weight. I thought that was awesome because I've always felt that we are really great at this, and if we just put some organization and some effort into it, we could be even better. So I was really pleased to read this report. I read it front to back. It took me a long time, and
Not everyone likes to read.
I really appreciate it, and I appreciated all the links that you provided in there. It gave me lots of things to think about, and you know how we might be able to do things a little bit better around the whole grants thing. My only concern is we take our grant money. We used to have 50,000. Last year we had some issues. We cut it down to 25,000. I feel like if we take this 25,000 and put it into that pot, I feel like we're going to have to find that other 25,000 to come back to do the other things, like with some parameters, obviously, and
For
criteria.
local community events.
Yeah, or yeah, exactly. Or the kids looking for travel assistance or those kind of things. So I know you mentioned that in there, that we do have this fund, but we would really be, if we were putting that $25,000 into this specifically, then I feel my colleagues and I will have to figure something else out also.
And I think there could be different ways to support events. Sometimes it is a chunk of money in a check, and other times it could, like I said, could be a facility rentals or
which we do,
or permits or
on
whatever it might
occasion.
be. So yeah, there's different opportunities there.
Thank you. Anything further? So, thank you so much for getting us to this day, because I think it's one we've talked about for a bit of time now in terms of trying to get something in front of us to think about this whole big piece, this big picture of event and sport tourism. So we really appreciate, Laura, the work that you put into it, obviously with Ryan and community, and it's obviously very, very helpful to have it now to be able to give us some sense of direction and start to put our teeth into it to build that next steps. So thank you so much for coming this morning, and again, we feel badly our friend Ryan isn't here, but our thoughts are with him. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
I want to, we've got 20 minutes till our next delegation. We've got lunch here, so I'm going to take a recess for now until we have a bite to eat, and then we're going to get on. The one thing I wouldn't mind talking about at the end of the day that's not part of our agendas is our public meeting tonight with the Rotary Lake. And I just want to give you guys a little bit of an overview of kind of thoughts and things that we put together for this evening's thing at the end of the day before we adjourn.
I forgot about Jeremy and the Music Festival.
Open meeting, and our next item, we got through bylaws and mayor's business, so our next item is diary.
Nothing to update, your worship.
Consent calendar, motion to approve. Councillor McFadden, Councillor Schumann. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Strategic priorities.
Nothing to update.
Committee of the Whole and the RCMP aren't available. So we'll move to our next Director of Corporate Administration, 14.2.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, welcome.
Thank you. I'll keep this really quick. There's just a couple of things that I did not include in my report. The grant writing position, we had it out for posting and we've received quite a few applications, so we'll be going through those and selecting a new grant writer. And a couple other items that's still in the works is the Recognition Committee and the Board of Variance Committee. We're still looking for members for those, so we're going to put another Facebook post out to try and push some interest there, and if I could get council support to see if you know of anybody in the community that you might want to reach out to help me out with that.
We'll definitely share that.
Okay, I think Cindy sent an email, but we can send another one just to remind.
But when you put it on Facebook, we can share it on Facebook too.
Yes.
All our contacts.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Good. Thanks, Brenda. Any questions? Thank you. Chief Financial Officer? Deputy Chief Financial Officer?
Oh, let's just call it.
We've had lots happening in our department, as you well know. We've had, we're actually working right now with our training webinars for payroll timesheet automation. We had a meeting on May 3rd for the supervisors and managers, and feedback that we received from the webinar has been provided to us, and we're now looking into it. Based on Adam's request when he came to council, one of his last ones, the city committed the first $1 million of the $5 million to Canaccord Genuity on May 2nd. The next one will be coming out on July 3rd, just shortly around the tax time. We got through budget, we got through audit, and we're still in the works in collecting the outstanding monies from the mobile home parks, and in the report it shows you what we've collected to May 15th. As you can tell with the second quarterly report from April to June, we've almost completed all our commitments for this quarter, and we're quite pleased with that. We participated in the social committee's Earth Day, and we won first for our plants that we grew downstairs. The kindness meter revenue is slow in coming in. To May 30th, we have collected $210.33, and we have paid out 2 payments, Special Olympics and Step Up and Ride, each for $402.31. And other than with Adam leaving, we are down a person with regards to the tangible capital asset position. I wanted to bring also for your information, the property tax collection to May 25th. We sent out 5,820 tax notices, and we've already collected 11.47, or about 11% to date. So we still have about 88.91% yet to collect, so we're happy about that. Our homeowner grants are coming in. We've collected 399 to date. We've deferred 3. And our online homeowner grants claim to date is 160, which isn't too bad for that. So
That's my report.
And I'm just gonna jump in with the CFO recruitment and just update council on that process right now. So in that process, we've posted, we've interviewed, we have a couple strong candidates that we've had follow-up interviews with, and we will be doing reference checking, and I hope that within the next week or so, I'll be able to report out to council that we have a CFO.
Good. Thanks, Duncan. Any questions for Janet? Thanks, Janet. And General Manager of Community Services.
Worship. So keep it brief and fast as well. There are a number of things within the report. If you'd like to have any questions at the end, I think we'd focus on 3 things. But there are a lot of things that are very positive in that report, from dialogue with our teens through some new senior programming. And it's a very active and busy recreation group right now. I wanted to give you an update quickly on the exhibition grounds and the work that's going to be completed. We went out to 4 local contractors and were able to secure pricing in a very short time from 3 of them. We had Pavlis Trucking, Celtic Home or Construction, Hagee Construction, and Dolan Construction did not submit in the end. For our responsibilities of termination of services of the buildings, we're looking at the demolition and the electrical support, and the contractors will do full demolition, and there was some pricing and work that Duncan has negotiated with the exhibition grounds in regards to the washrooms, the additional cook shacks, and money for the tents. And so looking back at the demolition, the little bit of the, once you get the information, the abatement program around removal of hazardous materials had to be submitted. And then once that plan comes back, they're pretty much ready to roll. We've provided all the permits they require. And I think once they get going and in there, if the weather still holds well, it should be no later than a couple of weeks, I think, to get it all done. Working certainly in close communication with Connie and their group down there, trying to work around anything that is, and it's very emotional. It's that those buildings have been there for a long time, and the community has built those and around them. So some of the siding that had some special paint on it, some artwork on it, has been removed and will be given back to the exhibition for storing. And trying to work around some other groups that have got things booked or hoping to still book. So the construction, once it gets going, it'll be fast, and we'll be on top of that and work with Connie as closely as we can. Okay, Duncan, was there anything else around that? No?
Just raise really quickly, I raised with the PRRD the aspect of seeing if we can get a request for some return of the dumping fees to the PRRD. I know they've waived dumping fees to other groups in the region in the past. When the Chetwynd Arena, I think, went down, when they were demolishing it, they waived dumping fees. So we're going to make a request at the next board meeting to return the weight dumping fees to us, and I think that could be 30 or 40 grand that we'll bring back into our costs. So we'll put that forward. Duncan?
Yeah, I see Brenda probably, I know we can't do a motion in the committee of the whole, but that was something that we were supposed to remind you of, and we forgot about that.
My apologies.
During committee or during mayor's business.
Well, we're
Maybe
going to move
at the end.
ahead with it.
Yeah.
Pretty sure council are okay if we get some money back from our
You okay with that, Mark?
regional neighbors.
I'll be all right.
If we can, I'll seek your support in the future. Thank
And there also just quickly around that, there were some concerns around the concession of the food. So I'm going to meet with a representative from the committee tomorrow. I think it's best we just, again, although we said they needed to care for that, we would do some communication, and I'll update Duncan. Really, one thing we should understand, or at least know, is the Legend software. It's a project we've been working on for quite a while. This is all of our course registration, drop-in passes, punch cards, and facility rentals. That has been uphauled, and that training now will be this week, and Anna has done an extremely excellent job with that, and very much looking to getting that in service. The trainers are up from Ottawa this week, so that's a really big one. And one more, I think it's I think probably maybe get copies and throw them in the councillor's mail. It's just a really neat project that the staff have been working on for a little bit. I don't mean this in a in a wrong way, but the code for something that happened in the pool would be around brown bear. So we needed to work around terminology, and it really came down to the efficiencies of cost savings. If you had an average of 30 fecal accidents in your pool in a year, each incident can cost up to $1,000.
Yes.
Okay, and average of 90 pools of pool closures, 90 hours of pool closures. Each incident, filters have to be backwashed, cleaned, approximately 2,400 to 10,000 gallons per backwash. That's a lot of water over those. And about after backwash, the water pool temperatures drop, causing energy bills to rise when heating the pools. So we've got some really good. We worked with some communities. No one wants to. It's a tough wordage around it, but we had some of our customer consultations, and it's very friendly user. It's not trying to offend anyone, but trying to remind them of some really good pool behaviors, and and it really comes down to 4 easy ways to keep poop out of the pool, right? And there's no easy way to say that, but it's very.
Just say don't poop in our pool.
I'm glad we can hire you. You can come down and help us with a little of that marketing. But they've done a great job. So I just wanted to bring that aware to council. It rolled out and it's been positive, and I think it's very important from our side that those efficiencies are tracked back through council. And it's closures of pools cost money. So I remember we had a streak there when it was there was a foot fungus. It closed way too much, so enough information. Any questions of the? We're trying to be very efficient. It's a tough one to do, but it's a very good job of staff. I wanted just to know.
Very good to sing.
Can I sing?
Great report. Thanks.
I can sing.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Trying to keep it fast, I know.
Thanks, Barry.
But please, if you have any questions out of it.
Any questions for Barry? Thanks, Barry.
It's the shortest I've ever talked.
Oh.
That's why you should have sang.
Thank you.
You just want to get out of this. You don't get your blood transfusion for tonight's meeting.
I'll tell you about that later.
Development services.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually how I will. It's good though. Just bring a little light to the day. Couple updates. 10th Street Bridge is closed. Contractors on site working away. They had to do some excavation on the approaches because when the material was put in last winter, it was too cold and didn't compact properly. So they re-excavated, recompacted. That's in later this week. They should be pouring the concrete approach slabs. Next week, we should see curbs go down, and the schedule right now is June 15th should be paved if everything goes as per the schedule. Then there'll be some landscaping and stuff to finish, but once it's paved, they can open the road and they can, do the landscaping aside. So that's all good. Capital projects should be kicking off here fairly soon. Just finalizing contracts with Peter Brothers, who got the projects. They'll be starting up on 94th Ave. There's a small sidewalk project up there that needs to be done. We need to get 10th Street Bridge completed before they can do some of those other projects, just because of traffic management and a few things. We can't afford to have that bridge closed and closing down other ones. So we're working with multiple contractors just to manage that. One other thing I did want to mention, we talked about asphalt patching earlier in the meeting, and something that I didn't mention that I should is that we're getting some new patching equipment for our own maintenance purposes. We're going to be trying some new processes out specifically for just potholes. What we've been doing to date is early in the spring we buy what's called Instapatch. It's you get a barrel of asphalt and you go out and you shovel it in, you pack it in, and it's very expensive, and it typically doesn't seem to hold real well. So what we're doing is we're buying an infrared heater and also a small little trailer mounted oven, for the lack of a better word. We can take asphalt chunks that we recycle from dig jobs, or even the paving contractor has said they've got a bunch of scrap asphalt they'd be willing to give us. We can put it in the oven, we can heat it. We can take the infrared heater, heat the area and the patch, put the heated asphalt in and pack it ourselves, and we'll have a much better solution for potholes. This enables us to be a little more proactive with potholes. They'll last longer, and yeah, overall better product. So we're excited to give that a try.
Yeah.
So we'll be starting on that soon. That'll be more so, like I said, probably benefit us next spring, but yeah, try it out. So other than that, if any questions, I was going to talk about rooming houses, but I thought we'd kind of beat that to death earlier, so we're done with that.
Councillor Beckoff?
The local area projects, did you get results from them yet, or?
Local area, like we didn't have any local area service projects this year.
Oh.
They're all on arterials or the exempt ones, so. Yeah.
Are we afraid to tackle them now, or?
Well, it just so happens the ones that we're doing are on more of those main streets, and so they're exempt from that. But I was actually thinking about this the other day, that there's a number of residential streets, a number of them that are in tough shape, and that we're gonna have to get into those areas. And we're gonna have to look at that local area service. The way it's set up right now is that basically the residents would fund, the asphalt, just the asphalt cap, 2 inches of asphalt on that road, and the city would fund anything else that's required there. So even though that's a small portion of a project, it's it's still significant for the homeowners to fund. So we'll see if those are successful in the future.
Well, one of the streets, 95th, was turned down before, and it's one of the worst ones in town, so.
It was the one I was actually walking on when I was thinking about that very same thing, yes, there last week.
So it's something that we may have to come to terms with and change the system a bit.
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Parslow first.
Okay, I just have two questions.
Mm-hmm.
One stems from something Councillor Rogers sent out about the release of infrastructure funding. Do you remember that email you sent out?
Oh, that one, yeah, that was,
The hundreds of millions of dollars,
that's the feds and.
the feds and provincial, yeah.
provincial government
And I just
for
wondered,
infrastructure
did we
spending.
have any capacity to respond to that?
We haven't responded to that. We've got our NDIT grants in, and I think we got those in last week or the week before. And now we're looking for a grant writer, so we haven't applied for anything on that.
And this year, we've got the $4.5 million water treatment plant that was infrastructure funding, and I think you have to complete those projects that you have received funding for before you can apply for more as well, right?
And we had also applied on the 10th Street Bridge on another infrastructure, and we never heard anything on it. We never got thanks, no thanks. So, not sure what happened.
Okay, thank you. So the last one is my inability to understand something you've written. So if you, under news and notes in your report, okay?
Yes.
I'm reading a sentence that says the MOTI indicated that the recent hydro relocation at the intersection, that was 17th Street and Alaska Avenue, was not a result of MOTI planning on any intersection improvements in the near future.
Right.
So, am I correct in reading that whole lengthy, seemingly drawn out piece of work was hydro initiated?
That's correct.
Okay, it had nothing to do with improving the intersection from a safety point of view.
It was not driven by that. My understanding, because I'd heard some similar things, that it might have been because MOT wanted to do some work there. So I did follow up, and what I was told is it was driven by hydro for their infrastructure, but while doing it, they put things in certain locations so that they could allow for an improvement in that intersection into the future, but it was not the sole reason that they did that work. It was hydro driven.
Okay, so related to that, any news on the cleanup of that area and the repaving of that area?
So I've had correspondence back and forth as recent as this morning with the project manager with BC Hydro, and they said that they plan to be on site with the contractor. Again, the contractor was in a couple weeks ago, looked at everything, kind of an assessment of, now that the snow is gone, understanding what it looks like. They were planning on being on site later in the week, is what I was told, and they would like to meet with us, because I was adamant that we needed to meet with them prior to them doing any work to make sure they understand where we're at and what our position is as far as the scope of work. So that's the last I've heard.
And I was at the Peace Williston Advisory Committee meeting, which is the BC Hydro Committee meeting, last week, and I talked to Bob Gammer, the regional manager for Hydro, and said, look, we're very unhappy with this, and I know Kevin and staff are dealing with it. We want that street fixed, we want that intersection fixed, and we want that cleanup done in front of Husky and all that other stuff, that they made a real, and he's assured me that they've engaged with the contractor and it will be repaired.
No.
So that includes repaving from Metallics up past Husky?
That's correct.
Yeah,
That's what we've met on site with the project manager and kind of highlighted where the damage to the road has occurred. It's, you know, and so they, to date, they've agreed with us, but until I'm on site with them and actually see and we talk about the scope of work and they agree that, you know, they need to pave from here to here, yeah. Well,
pretty blatant.
it is very, I believe so as well.
Thank you. Anything else for Kevin? The water treatment plant, the expansion, it's now...
The which, sorry?
The expansion of the water
Yes.
treatment plant?
So contractors on site and they have started work on that. So that's underway. Trucked waste facilities finishing up. There's just a few minor deficiencies that they're working on. And the raw water reservoir should be getting underway here in June.
Good.
The completion of that.
Thanks, Kevin.
Sandy dump's up and running.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
Anything further? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further for open?
Yeah, through your worship, I do have the draft of the letter to the regional district. I don't know if you wanted me to read that out or you just want to move the motion in.
What's your pleasure? And I'm, like I said, I'm making the pitch to them to help waive and return some of those tipping fees to us. And so I'm writing a letter to the board, and I was going to present it at the next meeting.
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
Do you want to read the letter?
Move second.
There you go, you can sleep at night down, Brenda.
Move second.
will vote yes.
All in
You want
favor?
to
Help you word
Is
the
that enough?
letter.
We've got a mover and a seconder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't want to run the meeting.
I'm okay with that. I think we all are if we can get some bill back.
No.
So moved by Councillor Javekov, seconded by Councillor Schumann. Everybody clear and okay on the motion?
Yes.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. There you go, Brenda.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so a motion to adjourn or recess and go into back into close. Councillor McFadden, Councillor Rogers. All in favor? Thank you.
You're talking about tonight. It has to be